Guard duty for the family was usually tedious, but the pay made it worthwhile. The current assignment was long, the hours dragging, but the overtime bonus promised a generous next payday. 10 guards from Mommy S. Boys LLC had been assigned to protect Timmy the Wonder Boy, 37. An internal memo had recently warned, calling this job daycare would result in a pay cut. Their main role was to help Timmy power level, which at least brought some action. They were stationed around the edge of a massive orc camp, clearing out wandering enemies and maintaining control of the area so event triggers would spawn. Timmy and his guest were awaiting the 7th wave of such events. These included various assaults on the camp, chief talk on a warg, packs of goblins, wandering giants, or shaman trios. Sometimes it was good loot and XP. Sometimes it was just comedic relief watching Timmy get flattened. But today, things were slow. Timmy was teamed with an old guildmate, Dark Death 54, who could actually fight. That meant Timmy hadn't died once. Yet. Think we'll get talk again, Timmy? Want the chief or his bodyguards? DD54 asked. The two had been grinding hard and were back up to level 4. Their first solo netted them core skill points, letting them raise their STR cap and instantly boost it. The next wins had just yielded regular loot and EP. I think it's time for some solo attempts, Timmy said. Solo? You sure you're ready? Not me, you. I'm still squishy. But you? You can kite them. I'll hang back with the boys. If it goes sideways, I'll jump in. Deal. But if I die, no saving me. Just record it for Bludgeon's next vidcast. Toss me a beer. Timmy tossed the beer and was walking back when a runner reached the camp. Message from the chairwoman. Granny says get your skinny ass to Sedgwick. Bring any family assets. Family business, DD. Later. Beer's yours. With that, Timmy vanished down the hill, headed to town. DD54 shrugged, dragged the beer chest to the center, and settled in. If it was just Uftalk and his squad, he could handle it. He was sipping from Uftalk's skull-turn mug when 50 orcs emerged from the forest surrounding the camp. DD54 just sat and drank. A group of 10 approached. 6 heavily armed bodyguards. 1 short herald. 3 massive orcs. 1, an ancient veteran with graying skin and battle tattoos. Another, a female built like a powerlifter. The third, a younger male, armed to the teeth and radiating raw aggression. The herald sneered. Where is Uftalk? Why you here, Pinkskin? Grovel before the big chief. DD54, fluent in Orcish, poured another drink, threw the bottle at the herald's head, and cracked his skull. The orcs laughed. The elder stepped forward. His eyes sparkled. Chief Grunk roared, but was held back by Great Chief Stoneshore. He eyed DD54 and grinned. Oh, great. This is gonna suck, DD54 muttered. Then the fighting began. Back in Sedgwick, Ozzy sat in deep thought, nursing his 3rd beer. He and the group needed to level. Every stat point counted. Suzette could boost DX, AGI, and CHR as a barmaid, plus some INT and WIS through her hidden skill. Ben was relying on successful courier runs, but might grind mobs with a whip or hand crossbow. Raleigh? He had problems. ACME hadn't even gotten him a sheepdog. He was trying to tame sedge beasts instead. Maybe they could all chip in to get him a big dog. Ozzy had a plan. Throw cobbers, eat toxic meat, get sick, and build resistance. He needed con and poison resistance. Toolmaking might help with DX too. He walked to the barn, flipped a log into the corral, killed a sedge beast, and started the leveling loop. The system chimed. Asterisk gained 20 in cobber throwing. Asterisk gained 22 in street. Asterisk gained 2 in slaughter. 10 minutes later, Asterisk gained 5 EP in minor poison resistance. Asterisk gained 5 EP in con. We were joking about this plan, but it was working. Meanwhile, Eddie was prepping a stealth attack as a druid, shape-shifted into a cow to scout the barn. It would have worked if not for Ferdinand. Ferdinand, Lord of the Herd, caught scent of Eddie and decided this unfamiliar cow needed his attention. As Eddie scouted, Ferdinand moved in. The game system triggered. Welcome to Ferdinand's herd. You have gained the skill, Breeder. You have been marked as belonging to Ferdinand. Eddie screamed. The team in the bushes launched everything they had. Fireballs, special arrows, explosive bolts. The corral exploded. Ozzy's cobra landed mid-blast, killing Eddie. Then Ferdinand exploded with rage. He tore through the attackers. Betty joined him. Together, they slaughtered the intruders. Ozzy found the bodies, stripped their gear, and delivered the final blows. He stacked everything neatly in the courtyard and laid down for a nap. The system logged. Asterisk 4 player kills. Asterisk 1500 EP towards Tier 2. Asterisk 260 EP in Street. Asterisk 60 EP in DX, Con, Toolmaking, and Poison Resistance. Billy logged in. What the hell happened? Workers gestured to Ozzy, asleep with an arrow in his shoulder. Morning, Mr. Billy. Ozzy yawned. Just had a little trouble with some players messing with Ferdinand. Clean it up. Mind if I sell the gear to buy tool handles? Yeah, sure. Go get patched up. Ben and Raleigh appeared, munching muffins. I miss everything, Ben muttered. Billy sighed. The team was doing fine. Now, if only the rest of his scouts were as productive. The scouts arrived, finally. Report. Now. Greenberg showed a map with a huge blank circle. What is it? Manwar grinned. How about a sealed city, a mile across, wrapped in runestones? Greenberg pointed at a repeated rune. Godobra. Billy blinked a few times. A city? A hidden, fething city? With a dungeon. Greenberg, ever composed, took a measured bite of his lemon before answering. Indeed, as Manwar indicated, a large ruined city concealed behind a perimeter of rune-carved monoliths. Only the most diligent of cartographers would stumble upon it. And where there are ruins, there are almost certainly dungeons. I presume that qualifies us for the bonuses you so generously offered. Billy forced a smile, grasping for control. Right. Yes. You found exactly what I sent you for. I'll get accounting to process the bonus, once we confirm the dungeons and start pulling loot. If Billy could secure the city without involving Vern, he could claim a larger share of the profits. That made the delay worthwhile. Manwar and Munger left the negotiations to Greenberg, who had the patience of stone and the tenacity of a tax collector. Manwar didn't like drawn-out arguments, and Munger could be bribed with ale. Greenberg, though, would haggle for hours. That presents a complication, Greenberg said smoothly. Our contract included pay for scouting and additional bonuses for areas of significant interest. We fulfilled both. The payment is due. Billy groaned internally. He didn't have time for this. Layla was en route, and Vern might not be far behind. He needed this discovery to cement his position. Listen, fellas, ACME is a big machine. You'll get paid, just not right this second. Now, where exactly is this city? Greenberg glanced to his companions. Manwar, Munger, you've earned your rest. I can handle the rest of this conversation. Grab a room at the inn. As the others departed, Greenberg faced Billy. As to the location, it lies more or less than 100 miles in a direction that may include north, south, east, west, or a combination thereof. Billy's brow twitched. I could hire new scouts. Find it myself. Leave you with nothing. Greenberg opened his journal and calmly began sketching a doe and fawns. You said yourself you're out of time. Hiring more scouts isn't an option. And I, being an immortal, can afford to spend the next several days reminding you of that. It was the sketches that broke him. Adorably drawn animals were Billy's kryptonite. He finally caved and paid the scouting fees, a punctuality bonus, and a handsome reward for the discovery of the ruins. The dungeon bonus would be deferred until loot was in hand. That was fast, Manwar remarked as Greenberg returned to the inn. A man in a hurry shouldn't haggle with an immortal, Greenberg said, dropping a heavy coin pouch on the table. We compromised on the dungeon clause. He'll pay after the first haul. Manwar shrugged. Fair. We don't even know if there's a dungeon. Time to show the client his prize. Ben and Raleigh decided not to take Ozzy to the tavern. Instead, they led him to the stream. Raleigh removed Ozzy's bloodied shirt and apron, cleaned the wound, and with practiced ease, removed the arrow. Healing magic closed the injury, leaving only a faint scar. After freshening up, they sold the looted gear, most of it useless to them, and splurged on a big breakfast. Then Raleigh and Ozzy returned to the barn to begin repairs on the corral. Ben, meanwhile, reported to Billy. "There you are, Ben. Ozzy okay?" "He's fine. Barely a scratch once we patch him up. Those buffs really help." "What's the job? Another run to Rowan Keep?" Billy handed him a sealed packet. "Correct. Deliver this, retrieve anything waiting for us, and bring back a passenger. Layla, an ACME area manager. She's going to be my assistant. Take your time. I want this place cleaned up and ready before she arrives." "Got it. Me and Beatrice will keep it slow. Not like we can go fast anyway." At the livery, Matthias greeted him. "Just in time. Go take a look." Up in the hayloft, Ben found a narrow hidden room. Modest, but better than his current accommodations. He accepted gratefully. "You're welcome to it," Matthias said. "You need a proper bed if you're going to replace me someday. Come in evenings, read, rest. We'll go over area geography when you're back." Beatrice, the donkey, eyed Ben's whip warily. One disapproving snort was enough to make him think twice about using it. He hitched her up and set off. Billy followed his scouts as they carved a path through the woods. Trees fell, brush was cleared. After 30 minutes, the party stopped. "It gets tricky here," Manwar said. "There's a compulsion to turn around. The closer you get, the stronger it becomes." "Lemons," Munger muttered. "Secret elven tricks and citrus," Greenberg added. "And deer sketches," Manwar grinned. Billy groaned. "I don't care if you summon squirrel demons. Just get me to that city." Greenberg's solution was simple. With the others holding his hands and blindfolded, he moved forward in short bursts. Then he'd turn them around to break the compulsion and repeat. Tedious, but effective. Billy felt like insects crawl beneath his skin. His urge to return to the village nearly overpowered him. "Is it this bad? All the way around?" "Yep," Manwar confirmed. "We walked in circles for days until Greenberg cracked it. Found what looks like a gate. We're heading there now. It gets worse." Dexter asked, "Do we really need to close our eyes?" "I keep tripping." "Be my guest," Munger laughed. "Try walking forward. See how far you get." Dexter pushed on confidently and got stuck in place. The contract workers, however, were unaffected by the compulsion. Billy eventually had to be carried over Munger's shoulder. By noon, they reached the gate. Two massive megaliths, 14 feet tall, standing 10 yards apart. Smaller runestones trailed off into the forest. Beyond, glimpses of crumbling buildings. Cham and John raced forward. "YOLO! First in!" The stones flared blue and silver. Lightning rained down. Cham and John disintegrated. The thunder alone knocked everyone else flat. "Yeah," Manwar said, brushing off dust. "Meant to mention the lightning." "It stings," Munger added. "I tried 3 times. Never made it past. But there it is, Mr. Billy. One ancient city, likely filled with dungeons." Billy was silent. Then he nodded. "That's tomorrow's problem. Jorges, you ever built roads?" 6,000 miles of Roman roads in EQO2, Jorges replied. "I can get you a straight shot to Sedgwick by tonight. Gravel and stone pavers tomorrow." "Perfect. You're in charge. Go late. Food will be waiting at the tavern. We'll send lunch out." High in the mountains of Tharn, the golden bell of the northern tower rang for the first time in a millennium. Its tolls echoed through the valleys. In the temple of eternal vigilance, the 8th flame blackened. Inquisitor Diego appeared at the doorway before Brother Morton could even speak. "It is as I dreamed. Godobra has been found. I ride north. Summon the paladins. We'll see if the new recruits are truly faithful." In a decrepit brewery near Wolfsburg, a Momco operative burst in. "ACME found something big. The chairwoman has Timmy en route with a squad. She wants backup." "Forget Timmy," the executive growled. "Send 2 Merc squads north with Brandon. I want what ACME found. Steal it. Mark it. It's ours." ACME may have discovered it, but to Momco, the world was already theirs.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Chartok the Necrobunny was having a bad day. He'd really wanted to make the whole rabbit theme work. No one ever conquered the world with undead bunnies. Just the looks on the humans' faces would have been worth the trouble. The problem was, they really weren't terribly effective. He'd gathered up a horde of about 30 zombie fat rabbits and went to clear out a bandit camp for practice. Score: bandits 30, zombits 2. And he'd even attacked while they were asleep. He went back to the burrow to see if he could find some tougher ones. He took over a fresh bunny body and walked in. The silly things paid him no attention. It took about 10 minutes for him to kill a few dozen and turn them into undead. The first level was full of fat rabbits and ruled over by a stout rabbit. Chartok rolled on the ground laughing. What was next? Big bone rabbits? Portly rabbits? He was never going to make this theme work. He was so glad he hadn't spent points on this theme. Time to go back to working with wolves. What to do with all of these stupid, undead bunnies following him? Maybe turn them loose near a village and let the feral undead bother some humans? That sounded fun. He took them over to the nearest village and snapped all of the necromantic bonds he used to control his minions, eager to see what they did. What they did was start eating grass. Stupid rabbits. Human zombies had a hunger for brains, but these were hopping around looking for grass. He was done. Time to head south and find a pupper to take over and build his pack back up. First, though, he was going to spend a few points. He had saved the points he earned getting to Tier 2 in case he found some spiffy bunny-only power, but they continued to disappoint. He was a Tier 2 boss now. Time to make the world fear him. Chartok's sheet in post-chapter notes. Surveying the scene of last night's little battle, Ozzy was even more confused. What did those guys hope to accomplish by destroying a corral and chunk of pasture? Easy enough to fix. He started dragging the killed sedge beasts over to his butcher block while Raleigh filled in the hole. As he was cutting up the carcasses, Ozzy saw Raleigh dragging some large logs over to the broken corral. Aren't those a tad big, Raleigh? We should probably go cut some lodgepole to fix that, not foot-thick timbers. Nah, I got this. I want to try out one of my new shepherd powers. Ozzy watched as bony blades sprouted from Raleigh's forearms. The things were 2 foot in length and looked deadly. He took a log and ran the blade down the edge of the log and sheared off a 1-inch thick plank, then proceeded to turn the entire log into a stack of planks. Holy shit, when did you learn to do that? What the hell are shepherd powers? Raleigh continued to make planks, easily cutting the huge timbers down. Oh, I grabbed a perk for increased damage from natural weapons when we got points for killing that wolf boss. That interacts with my shepherd class abilities and lets me use some new abilities. Pretty cool, isn't it? Frightening was a better word. Ozzy thought to himself, and then shrugged. Raleigh had always been able to find weird little advantages in classes no one else bothered with. Looks like he'd done the same here. It took a couple of hours to repair all the damage. Raleigh quickly rounded up a small herd of cows and started feeding them into the rebuilt corral. The great slaughter began again. Ozzy called a break around noon and started up a fire. I grabbed some onions and garlic from the garden behind the inn. Let's see how herb-encrusted sedge beast liver tastes. After frying up the sliced liver and onions, Ozzy tried a bite and grimaced. Damn, I think that's twice as bad. He staggered off behind a tree. Raleigh munched on a slice himself. 5 minutes later, Ozzy got back and saw that not only had Raleigh finished the pan of meat, he was frying up some more. This stuff is actually pretty good, Ozzy. I'm not sure why you guys don't like it. Raleigh, aren't you getting notifications about the poison? That much is probably going to kill you. No worries, Ozzy. They keep showing up, but my shepherd powers are neutralizing the poison pretty fast, getting some nice increases. You have eaten enough poison meat to kill a normal human. Luckily, you are pretty far from normal right now. You have gained 50 points in minor poison resistance. NPR is now at rank 1. You have gained 50 points in CON. Your CON is now at rank 1 for a total of 3. You are still famished. It's like you were eating for 2. Just then 2 large wagons pulled up to the barn, each pulled by 4 oxen. 2 legionnaires in light armor hopped down and walked over. Greetings, citizen. Gustavus of the Emperor's Legion at Rowan Keep. I understand you have a load of hides for me and another of cured meat. He looked oddly at where Raleigh was slicing up more liver and setting it to fry. The smell was horrible. Ozzy decided to let Raleigh enjoy his lunch. Sure thing. Let's get you loaded up. Mr. Billy said you'd be coming by. I've got 200 full carcasses hanging, and 50 should be cured well enough. Check them out. and tell me what you want loaded. I'll load up the hides. Each wagon had a crew of 4 men wearing tunics, but no armor. Each did have a sword, though. New recruits, probably. They started to grab individual hides off a stack, but Ozzy shooed them away. Easier to just do it himself. Bending down, he took hold of either side of the pallet and lifted the stack of hides and carried it to the wagon. Everyone got out of his way. He set the pallet on the end of the wagon and pushed it up to the front. You want another? It looks like your wagon can hold the weight, and I can toss another on. Gustavus stroked his chin and took a long look at Ozzy. That will be just fine, citizen. My men will make sure to balance the loads and stay out of your way while you load the wagons. Ozzy moved a second pallet to the back of the wagon, and then started carrying out smoked sedge bees 2 at a time and putting them in the first wagon. Both were loaded in about a quarter hour. The Legionnaire shook Ozzy's hand. My thanks. That puts us back on the road much quicker than I expected. You have a large enough stock on hand that I'll be sending the wagons down again tomorrow, along with payment, of course. Convey my thanks to Mr. Billy. And if you ever have a thought to other employment, please come see me. The Legion would welcome a man with your strength. I'll keep that in mind. Have a good trip, and I'll notify Mr. Billy about the second load. The wagons moved off down the road. After they left, Ozzy walked back down to where Raleigh was finishing his meal. How Raleigh could eat that shit was beyond him. Okay, round another bunch up. Might as well keep filling that smokehouse. The Legion seems hungry. Suzette burned. Her head exploded as daylight filled the room. She tried to hide under a blanket, but it was rudely ripped away. The light became brighter as Zephyr opened the other shutter. Damn girl, how late did you stay up last night? You knew we were leaving at dawn to go herb picking. Suzette considered throwing Zephyr out one of the windows, but was having trouble just getting up. A mug of tea was put in her hands, heavy with honey. Okay, maybe not kill Zephyr just yet. Well, maybe a bit past 4 a.m., but I have this skill that doubles my hours sleeping. Zephyr rolled her eyes. So, an hour and a half sleep, but it counts as 3 hours. Yep, that's plenty. Well, no sympathy. I'm up, so you get to be up. If we died as something horrible in the forest, you could take a nap then. Suzette downed the tea in 3 gulps. Death, yes. Must look on the bright side. Wow, this place looks so much worse in the daylight when you could see the dust. Last night had been her first sleeping at the tavern. The room was a long, narrow garret tucked under the eaves. The ceiling was 12 foot high in the middle, but sloped down on either side to only 3 high. Small cabinets and shelving filled the long, low sides of the room. Currently, the room was mostly full of ancient junk that needed going through and tossing away. Derek had told her she could keep what she wanted and toss the rest. Things have been stored up here for generations. Right now, she had her bedroll in a cleared spot of the floor. Cleaning out the room could wait for later when she had volunteers. She had several in mind. The girls headed downstairs to the kitchen. Grania refilled the mugs of tea, and Betty had just brought fresh bread from the oven and gave them a loaf to split with some fresh butter. Grania leaned back against the sink, wiping her hands on her apron, and gave Suzette a nod. Derek is happy with how things are working out. We went through quite a bit of alcohol last night to the adventuring crowd. When you get back, he'd like to show you the brewery in the basement. It's not much, but it keeps us in small ale and beer. The hard stuff we bring in from down south, along with that bludgeon brew crap. Will do. Herbs first, brewing second, then off to alchemy school, and then back to sling beer all night. Come, my young Padawan, we have to go find valuable herbs and dangerous beasts in the wilds. Suzette downed the tea, grabbed the rest of the loaf, and they were out the door. Out in the woods, Zephyr took charge. She gathered each herb or mushroom while lecturing on how to harvest them and a bit of their use. Suzette paid attention to the lecture, but more to the woods around them. She didn't want to have something like that damn worm sneak up on them again. Eventually, they came to the Phytolacus belladonna, where they had fought the thing and Suzette had died. The bush no longer had its juicy-looking berries. Zephyr explained they only ripen like that for a week or so each summer, and then the berries dried up. They looked like a bright red raisin and lay in heaps on the ground. So these are still poisonous? Suzette was gathering some up to experiment with. Not nearly as much. Birds and small animals will live for quite a while after eating them, then collapse. This spreads the seeds and provides fertilizer for the new bush. Dad and I actually pull a lot out of the ground each year to keep the spread down. Too many is bad for the area. Dad sent me for some of the potent kind for some work he was doing. These have their uses, though. They could be used in some alchemy, and I've heard that there's a way to distill some potent alcoholic beverages from them. But you'd have to be careful, or you just end up with some very dead drunks. Now, that interested Suzette. While Zephyr was getting some watercress and wild asparagus by the river, she put on her light gloves and gathered up a large bag of the poisonous raisins. She was going to be working on alchemy, brewing, and poisons. Surely, she'd find uses for these. They made it back to town, and Zephyr waved as she headed home. Derek was waiting for her, and she headed down to the large basement under the tavern to start learning brewing. The basement of the tavern was a maze of barrels and stacks of boxes. Derek hinted that it needed some work. The cleared area in one end had several work tables and what looked like a couple of covered wells by the wall. Derek was by one of the wells, getting a couple of buckets of water. First rule, use the water from this well. Don't take the top off the other one. The old well is bad. Various ingredients were laid out on the tables. Several types of grains, some burnt grain, honey, berries, and flowers. Rather than going over each item, Derek gave her a lecture on the basics. The first thing to understand about brewing is that it isn't exact. It depends on the ingredients used, how you use them, and the person doing the brewing. The cantrips don't do the same thing for any two people, so you're going to have to feel your way along as you do more and more complex brews. Each brewer achieves their recipes by following a formula and by having a good idea of what they want to create. Cantrips? Brewing takes magic. Suzette had never brewed in the real world. Alcohol got delivered like anything else. Of course it does. How else could we turn some rotten vegetables and water into something glorious like ale? Let's do a run through of a batch of small ale. You have the brewing skill, and that unlocks the cantrips for brewing. The book is open on the table there. They're pretty simple, couple of lines activated by voice. Derek gestured at the items on the table. Brewing ale and beer take some basic ingredients. Most any grain will make an alcoholic beverage, but for ale and beer, I like to use barley and groats. Beer also gets the dried hops flowers in this pile. Grains get turned into malt. The rest of this is the subtle stuff: fruits, honey, dark roasted malt. These can add some flavors and body to your brews. Today, though, we do basic ale. Okay, first we have a malt. Malt is grain that has just barely germinated and started to grow. This can be various grains, but I use a combination of two barleys that we grow here in Sedgwick. Take 4 big scoops of each of those grains and put them in that barrel, then add 1 bucket of water. Always use water from that well. It goes deep and draws up very clean water. The cantrip will let the water soak into the grains, and they'll germinate overnight. Just use the first cantrip in the book. There are no special gestures to it, just that line of verse. Cantrips generally had 3 or 4 syllables, often in an older language. The important part of the process was holding the image in mind for what you wanted to happen. Lack of concentration meant nothing happened. Suzette mumbled the cantrip, imagining the grain sprouting and growing, holding her hand over the grain. A green glow spread over the barrel of wet grain. Nice, that will do it. You got a nice glow going. On to the next step. Derek pushed a similar barrel of sprouted grain to her. This is dry. Crush it with the heavy rolling pin, and then mix in a scoop of the dried groats and a scoop of the roasted malt and crush it again. When it's all crushed, toss it in this barrel. I'll get the water boiling. Once this was done, the mixture of crushed grain, malt, and roasted malt were put in the barrel. Derek slowly poured in 10 gallons of not quite boiling water over the mixture with a ladle. After about an hour, they poured off the liquid into a fresh barrel. Yeast was added and the barrel sealed. Derek explained that the yeast and the first pourings would slowly ferment to make a heavy ale. To speed things up, he had her use the second cantrip, same as the first. Hands over the barrel, and think about that nice ale you were pouring last night. Then say the cantrip slowly. You'll feel a bit of a drain on your mana for this one. Don't hold back. A bit of extra mana makes for an ale with a nice kick. Luckily, Suzette had sampled this ale the night before and had a good idea of what Derek wanted. The cantrip was easy to say, and she felt her mana pouring into the barrel. She pushed a bit harder, like she did with her other cantrips, until she hit a bit of resistance. There was a deep green glow all over the barrel. Phew, that's good. That one will be potent. You must have a decent amount of mana to do that. A sound from the corner got their attention. The barrel that Suzette had said the germination cantrip over had sprouted. More than sprouted. New grain sprouts were 6-inch high and rapidly getting taller. Derek gave Suzette a long look. So, I think maybe you get a passing grade on making the cantrip work, but we need to work on your control a bit. Let's haul this outside before we have a farm growing in here. The pigs were quite happy with a snack of germinated grains. Suzette washed out the barrel and brought it back down. This time she held the thought of the grain slowly germinating and redid the cantrip. By that time, the used mash in the other barrel had cooled off. Derek explained why that was important. Hot mash and boiling water made for a worse brew. He repeated the process with 10 more gallons of boiling water, explaining that the first batch would make a strong dark ale and the second pourings would make a much lighter ale to drink with meals. When both barrels of liquid were ready, Derek added a bit of yeast to each and put the wooden tops on. Okay, last step. We can add other ingredients. Herbs, fruit, a bit of honey. It can add a bit of flavor, or could also make the brew taste horrible. Each brewer has some different recipes, and because we are mixing in some magic, there's variation from the brewer casting the cantrip. For today, let's stick to basics. Pick out a fruit or honey, just one ingredient. Add that and the yeast, and use the fermentation cantrip. And maybe just a bit less mana this time. Nothing strange happened this time. While they cleaned everything up, Derek went over the process again until she had it memorized. Tomorrow morning, we'll check your ale and start on another batch. I'm going to toss down some barrels today as well. Business is picking up. Last chore. I've got to show you how to make bludgeon brew. Is it difficult? Suzette could imagine the name brand had some exacting standards. Hardly. Derek grimaced. It ain't good beer, it ain't brewing, and it ain't tough. Over here we have the official bludgeon brew casks and the official bludgeon brew kit. Fill the cask with 40 gallons of water. That's up to this line on the inside of the barrel. Then dump the sack of ingredients in, stir, put on the top, and say the cantrip on the label. Dead simple. It's the one part of this deal with Acme I don't like. But people drink it. Brewing 101 accomplished, Suzette ran off for alchemy lessons. She'd be back soon for the start of her shift. Equals asterisk equals. The first thing to understand about alchemy is it isn't exact. It depends on the components used, their amounts, the order you mix them in, and the flavor of the alchemist's magic. The cantrips don't do the same thing for any two people, so you're going to have to feel your way along as you do more and more complex potions. Alistair had been waiting for her when she entered the shop and brought her back to his work area. He first had her don a heavy smock of gray material that came down her knees and covered her arms to the wrists. Wear this when working here, in case of a spill. Most things won't cause permanent harm, but when things get spilled, they can combine in odd ways. There are also several sets of gloves and goggles hanging on the rack. The first component of any brew is universal solvent, otherwise known as pure water. You can produce it easily by boiling water and catching the steam on a cool metal plate and letting it drip into a cup. Simple potions are created by dissolving ingredients in pure water with a cantrip, then heating the concoction until it turns, and finally focusing your magic and your will upon it. For today, we will start with a simple potion to give a warrior strength in battle. Alistair had her pour a beaker full of pure water, add a hair from a bull, a bit of powdered iron, and a smidgen of ground horseradish root. He had her practice with the cantrip, keeping the image in her mind of the ingredients fading into the water until it was clear again. Her first try succeeded to his satisfaction. Very good. The solution is clear, yet holds the essence of the ingredients. Next, we place it on this rune stone pad, an ingenious little device I created, and heat the mixture slowly. You'll see the mixture start to take on color. When it reaches its max potency, you'll need to focus on the effect you're trying for and push mana into it. The second cantrip is helpful with this, but eventually you will not need it. The words and gestures of the cantrips are a tool. The real magic comes from the thoughts in your mind and the mana you pour into the effect. I'll guide you through this one. The mixture heated slowly, becoming pink, and then darker red. Alistair signaled her to begin the cantrip. She could feel her mana drain away. For an image, she imagined the legendary hero Samson, standing between two pillars as he shook down the temple of his captors. She felt her mana stop pouring into the potion, and she received a message. Success! You have created your first potion. You receive the two cantrips, Universal Solvent and Mana Infusion. You have learned to make a weak potion of catastrophic strength. The person drinking this potion will gain 2 STR for 1 minute before taking 200 points of damage as his overworked muscles snap. There is also an increased chance of causing damage to anything touched during this minute. Gain 50 EP in Alchemy. Gain 50 EP in INT. Alistair capped the potion and handed it to her. An interesting effect. We may need to work on the image you are using for your STR potions. Let's move on to weak healing potions next. Running to the tavern, Suzette noticed how busy the town had become. New players seemed to be coming to the area every day. She knew that part of this had to do with the plentiful newbie areas around Rowan Keep and the keep's lack of a tavern or inn. Sedgwick had one of each and seemed to be the meeting place for a lot of the adventuring parties. Business was booming for the locals. Alistair was selling healing potions as fast as he made them, which was good for Suzette as he was happy to supply her with lots of ingredients for practice. Ranks on a character sheet didn't really translate into skill. The sheet just reflected the skill you had earned. The potency of potions was much greater when made by a practiced alchemist instead of a new player with the alchemy skill. She'd take all the practice she could get. As she entered the tavern, Derek was just coming up from the basement with a barrel of ale. He paused for a moment without setting it down. And here's the culprit. Follow me out back so we can open this up and see what you've done. Is that the barrel of ale I made? Why are we taking it out back? I thought it wouldn't be done until tomorrow. Derek set the ale down on a wooden stand made for holding a keg. Suzette saw a grating in the ground. Well, we have a bit of a problem. You're right. Should have been done tomorrow. But the magic is used up and the keg is ready. So, we need to see what you made. Maybe it's all fine, and you just put a bit too much mana into it, which sped the process. On the other hand, I've had batches just go bad and stink to high heaven, which is why we are opening it out here, where we can pour it into the sewer if it's bad. Take the tap and push it into the bunghole. Tap it with the wooden mallet to seat it tightly. Then pour a mug and we'll see. The tap went in fine. When she poured the ale into a mug, it came out very dark and quite foamy. But it didn't smell bad. She took a sip and started choking. That's a bit strong for my taste. She handed the mug to Derek. He took a sip and then another. Derek took a small sip and then a longer one. He closed his eyes as the beverage ran down his throat and hit his stomach. Strong isn't the word for it. This has the taste of a dark stout, but the alcohol content far past that. Closer to brandy at around 40 proof. Weak for a whiskey, but strong as hell for an ale. I don't want to pry, but I've got to wonder how much mana you put into this. The cantrip drains about 50 mana per batch for me. Oh, well, a bit more than that. Probably 200 to 250 mana. Is that bad? Derek took another sip. Well, in this case, I think it works fine. I'll tell a few of the regulars we have a special brew for them to try. Something with a kick like this will have more than a few folks who will like it. But we price it at 2x normal cost. It's not easy to make. That's a lot of mana to dump into one batch. He paused to smell the ale again and touched his nose. Already getting a bit numb from just half a mug. Let's make that 4x normal. But warn people before they drink a second mug. We'll have to work on your control. You have a lot of mana. Hell of a lot. Mana is just another ingredient in the brew, like hops or water. Need to measure it better. He took another sip. Not that a barrel like this every now and then is a bad thing. Not all. All right, Beatrice, let's ride. The cart moved maybe a foot. Beatrice cocked an ear back and brayed her annoyance. Okay, sorry, but saying let's drive a cart just doesn't sound right. If you don't like it, come up with your own phrase. The donkey looked at Ben for a moment before snorting once, and then let out a loud hee-haw and started pulling the car down the road. They'd gone about 3 miles when 4 men stepped into the road from some conveniently close bushes. And looking behind him, Ben noted 2 more. These had crossbows cocked. We need to have some words with you, Mr. Courier. You done us wrong, and there will now come a reckoning for your shaming actions. A second bandit turned to the first. Is it shaming actions, Jed? I think you'd want to be saying shameless actions, wouldn't you? A third shook his head. Nope, it's shameful. He should be ashamed of what he done. He really should. Shameless is a bit different. Jed looked at both of them. Can I interrogatate the prisoner, please? I don't interrupt once your turns. Ben was confused, and Beatrice didn't have an opinion on which word should be used. Excuse me, gentlemen, and yes, I am an official courier. Can I be let known how I have wronged you, please? I'm sure there is some misunderstanding. Jed looked at Ben. Well, I don't think so. The facts of the matter have been explored. You made a trip up to the keep the other day. We'd heard that a new chapter came in the mail from, well, it doesn't matter from who. We knew it was on its way. We were waiting here for you, sort of taking naps in the afternoon sun. Then instead of stopping, you just kept going up the road like you weren't stopping at all. We figured we'd been told wrong. But we checked, and sure enough, there was a new chapter of the perils of Penelope going to Grania in that mail shipment. But you weaseled right on by and didn't stop. That's just downright unneighborly, came a voice from one of the two behind Ben. Jed continued, and if we ain't neighbors, then I guess we go back to sticking pointy things in you whenever you go by. The boys were itching to do it just now, but I said that we had to talk at you first, declare your shameful actions, and then we'd stick things in you. Ben really hated having pointy things stuck into him. The two loaded crossbows behind him were making him very nervous. I have to agree, fellows, it was shameful, but perhaps mitigated by a lack of information on my part. Still, I'll take full responsibility. How about I run back to the village and see if I can't borrow that chapter from Grania and get right back here with it? Jed considered. Well, it's not according to the rules, but we do want to know what happens. But be quick about it. We'll keep Beatrice here with us. The boys brought some carrots for her. Ben just nodded, still confused by the circumstances. He took off running back to Sedgwick. The run went quickly, aided as he was by the huge boost in stamina that all contract workers gained and his own ability to move quickly. He got to the tavern, waved to Suzette and Derek in the backyard, and went in to see Grania. Trying to explain the situation to Grania, she interrupted him. Oh, Lordy, you didn't stop and get the boys caught up on what's going on? Not good. This little agreement is all that keeps them from skewering official couriers on every trip. Here, take this chapter and go read it to them and hope they forgive you. Read it to them? Well, of course. They're bandits. Not one of them can read, but their chief. Ben nodded his head, getting the gist of the story but still having a lot of questions. He took the pamphlet and quickly ran back to the wagon where several bandits were sitting on the ground. Gentlemen, I was successful and have the latest exploits of Miss Pauline in my hands. Please gather round and let us see what she is up to today. A half hour later, he and Beatrice were on their way again, and the treaty was considered intact. Ben considered the situation. It seems that this route used to be quite dangerous because of bandits and goblins. Probably still was for most people. But Matthias had obviously found a way to be beneficial to each group. And in both cases, he'd done it by an interesting interpretation of a courier's duties, bringing news to the bandits, delivering items ordered by the goblins. With these thoughts in mind, he made sure to wave at the goblin scouts and turn into the little path up to the camp. Just like last time, the chief handed him a bag of money and requested some bottles of Red Wizard whiskey. Back on the road again, Ben took his time as per Mr. Billy's request and rolled into Rowan Keep in the mid-afternoon. The keep was quite busy with several dozen new adventurers buying items from the merchants and pestering the Legion for various quests. There were also a good number of newly revived players sitting morosely around the statue in the courtyard. Several had bottles of Red Wizard in their hands. Ben sought out Captain Falcar. I believe I have something for you, Captain. He handed over the severed head of the necromancer wolf they had killed. Success. You have completed the quest. Destroy the wolf pack in the Hollywood. By bringing in the head of the alpha wolf, you have completed the quest started by others. Your group receives 2 silver pieces each. Sergeant Julius walked up and handed Ben a small bag of jingling coins. Thank you, hero. We will certainly not be bothered by this wolf again. An eerie howl echoed through the hills, growing in volume. Many players covered their ears. A sense of dread took hold of them all. The wolf eternal. Beware. For Chartok, the Necro-Wolf has returned, stronger than ever. Having reaped the souls of many heroes, the wolf spirit has taken a new body and rebuilt his pack of terror. Chartok roams the Hollywood once again. Captain Falcar glared at his sergeant. You just had to say it, didn't you? Julius slapped his forehead. Several interested adventurers began lining up to get information on the new quest. Ben wandered off looking for the whiskey merchant. He hoped to never see that wolf again. Unfortunately, worse was waiting for him, in the person of Layla Vandergilt. Finally, I've been sitting around this ugly little keep fending off advances from idiots for hours. Where the hell have you been? And what the hell is this, a donkey cart? Billy sends me an idiot driving a cart pulled by some glue factory reject? He has a lot to answer for. Ben just nodded and mumbled. He'd dealt with people like this before. Sorry, ma'am. Rhodes is dangerous. Have you back soon? Beatrice glared at her, unaware of how close to death she was. Layla simply climbed in the back of cart. Ben started back down the road to home. Beatrice made sure they hit every rock on the way. Layla only noticed they were off the main road when they came to the goblin camp. What the hell is this place? Ben stopped the cart. Just making a delivery, ma'am. Please just stay in the cart while I drop off the chief's booze. Hell, I will. I'm looking around. And this booze is crap. Ben saw she was holding a half-empty bottle of Red Wizard whiskey. He checked the case and back, and sure enough, it was opened and a bottle missing. This fact was not lost upon the enraged chief when Ben brought the case up to his wooden throne. Your female steals this chief's booze. Our agreement is broken, Ben Courier. This will mean war between our peoples. Ben quickly pulled out the bag of silver he'd been given as a quest reward. Oh, great chief. Know that this woman is not of my tribe. She is an enemy/friend of Chief Billy. To make good upon our deal, I pledge this silver for many bottles to replace the one that she took. The chief hefted the bag. This buys a lot more than one bottle, Ben Courier. A lot more. Ben eyed the half-drunk woman strutting around the camp and making disparaging comments about its inhabitants. The woman has also offended your tribe, and she offended Beatrice as well. Chief Billy would not be unhappy if she suffered a bit and did not make it back before the sky is fully dark. The chief looked at Ben, then at a still, fuming Beatrice. He stood and yelled, Thief! You steal the sacred fire water of the Red Wizard. You shall be punished. She shall suffer the pokings of 1,000 sharp sticks and be burnt upon the pyre. After her, my warriors. Do not let her run to the safety of her village. The goblins didn't have to be told twice. A dozen of them started poking lightly at Layla, barely drawing blood. She screamed and ran for the front gate, 24 goblins lazily running behind her. The chief picked up the half-empty bottle and poured 2 glasses for himself and Ben. The rest he put in a bowl for Beatrice. She'll show up a couple of hours past sundown. You have my word on that, friend, Ben Courier. Ben and Beatrice made good time and were home soon. They did make a small stop at the clearing where the bandits seemed to hang out. Chapter 174 of The Perils of Pauline had arrived for Grania. Ben read the chapter to them. He was getting better at doing all the voices to the bandits' delight. Later, after dark, Billy was sitting on the grassy hill overlooking the bridge at the edge of town. Layla came stumbling up the road, pursued by jeering goblins. One was poking her repeatedly in the butt with a blunt stick to keep her moving as the others just walked behind laughing. As she finally crossed the bridge, they turned for home. Layla turned and spat at them. Your days are numbered, you filthy little rats. Your whole village will be a smoking hole when I'm done. Billy took a sip of his freshly brewed dark stout and a bite of the meat muffin. Life was good today. Jorges waited until Billy walked away before gathering folks together. You heard the man. He wanted a road, and he put me in charge. We're going to build a road from here back to Sedgwick, and none of this detour and curve crap. Proper roads go straight. Dexter, take a crew of 5 people. I want a 60-foot tall pole put up with a mirror pointed in this direction and a lit lantern. On this end, I need a platform that's 3 square at the top and 20 high. You get a few thousand feet of twine and some bright cloth to make marker flags. Start on those trees over there. Once the pole is up, I'll take a direct sighting and lay out the path. We're clearing down at 4 feet into the sod and taking out all the stumps. I want the masons cutting stone slabs with a 6 thickness, lumberjacks on the trees and stumps. Everyone else is digging roadbed. Dirt in piles separate from stone. Except you two, I need 2 wagons so we can start hauling gravel from a couple of the riverbanks. Jorges could see the road in his mind. It cut straight through this section of forest and then through the meadows, past the barn by about 30 foot and right to the main road of the town. Maybe when this was done, Billy would let him build another straight to Rowan Keep. They kept working until hours after sunset. Finally, Jorges called it a night. The towers had gone up and shown him where to place the flags marking a path straight as an arrow. Trees had been cut and cleared and most of the stumps removed. They'd be back at it by dawn. But for now, the crew headed to the tavern and the promised food and drink. Ozzy and Raleigh kept working until they saw the rest of the crew heading to the tavern. Ozzy had explained as much as he could of what went on the night before. He wanted to ask about the strange system message he got about the agreement with Ferdinand, but decided not to. What happened at the corral stayed at the corral. But he did mention the 2 herd leaders wandering over and getting hurt, and suggested it might be better to keep them a couple of pastures away from the barn. With no one around to look, Ozzy got in an occasional cobber throw. He also showed Raleigh how he was working on the tool repair skill. Raleigh immediately made a half-dozen shepherd's crooks and broke them to work on later. Raleigh had been snacking all day on slightly roasted sedge beast, but was still up for food and drink at the tavern. They headed over to find a full house and a bit of trouble just getting started. The ACME crew were in the far end of the tavern, near the kitchen entrance, sharing 5 of the tables. Around the bar and the remaining 3 tables were 8 players, 8 very drunk players. 2 of them were hitting on Suzette, who alternated between flirting and taking their money for more beer and ignoring them. Ozzy was not in the least worried about Suzette, but the other bunch seemed to be a bit more belligerent and were giving the ACME crew a hard time. I'm a bit insulted by you lot's attitude. We came in here and want to get to know folks, but you don't want to play cards with us and don't want to arm wrestle, and you just keep to yourselves. The rest of us have been playing games and buying beers. Not joining it means the rest of us pay more. That's pretty stingy of you. All stood up. Right, well, if you feel that way, best we be heading back and getting some shut-eye. Mr. Billy wants us up early. Night, fellas. One of the players stood up. Well, that's fair. You guys just head on back. But I'm sure the ladies are happy to stay. Aren't you ladies? Betty, Althea, and Miriam said nothing but tried to leave with the rest. 3 of the players blocked the way, hands on weapons. Nope, I think you'll be staying. Several of the men were allowed to move past. They stood at the exit, not quite knowing what to do. But the women were pinned in and forced to take their seats again. There, isn't that better? Tell you what, boys, why don't you take a turn at arm wrestling? The bet's a silver piece. For each one of you that wins, we'll let one of the ladies head home early. Much laughter from the players at this. Suzette brought over food for Raleigh and Ozzy, and a mug of ale for each. She smiled slyly at Ozzy. You should give it a go, Ozzy. You're pretty strong. Finish that beer and go arm wrestle him. Ozzy had 2 questions. Why was she smiling them, starting trouble smile? And second, what was in this ale? It tasted funny, sort of medicinal. Yeah, come on over, Fozzie Bear. Show us what those muscles can do. Ozzy downed his beer and stepped over to the table. The player was obviously a warrior, so he'd have a high STR. 5? 8? Ozzy wasn't up on how players level their stats, but knew it was tough to get a 10. With his STR of 8, he should be able to hold his own at least. Luther Von Hack, the player across from Ozzy, looked forward to taking another bumpkin's money. He knew a lot of them were strong, but that didn't mean everything in arm wrestling. What mattered was the grip you had on the other guy, and he had an edge in that. He'd taken a perk called Strong Arm that increased his damage in combat by 5 points and made it difficult to knock his weapon out of his hand. What he'd been delighted to find out was it also made it easy to get the right grip on his wrestling opponents and grind their bones against each other. Really tough to use your full strength when the small bones in your hand bend in ways they shouldn't. Ozzy and Luther got settled, and someone yelled 1, 2, 3, go. Luther started pushing it too. He was a bit surprised as Ozzy didn't budge. After a minute of pushing hard and neither moving, Ozzy said, sorry, did you want to start at some point? I thought we were arm wrestling. Players laughed. Luther turned red. He gripped Ozzy's hand and bore down, only to find his own hand being crushed. There was a distinct snap, and Luther grimaced as something broke. Ozzy figured it was time to finish things. Really, this guy thought he was strong? This was no challenge at all. Ozzy slammed Luther's hand to the table. The table cracked. So did Luther's arm bones, both main bones broken and sticking through the skin. Luther held his arm and backed away. He screamed at the other players. Kick that cheatin' sumbitch's ass and send him to respawn. Then we slaughter the rest of these assholes. Dapper Dan moved forward and tossed a punch at Ozzy. Ozzy blocked it with an arm and threw a punch to his nose. Ozzy's fist didn't stop at the nose. He punched through the bone and into the center of Dan's head. Blood and brains went flying. Everyone was silent for a second. The rest of the players drew weapons and started to surge forward. And at this point, everything seemed to happen at once. Suzette jammed a dart through one of the players' hands, pinning him to the bar. Within a few seconds, he slumped forward unconscious. Ozzy grabbed the table behind him and easily threw it towards two more, knocking them unconscious and breaking the table. The workers at the door and in the back of the room surged forward. Raleigh casual stepped into the middle of the scrum. Within about 10 seconds, it was all over. Dapper Dan was down with a crushed skull, two players knocked out by the table, Luther whimpering in a corner. Of the other four, one was passed out at the bar, two had been pummeled unconscious by the workers, and one had died when Raleigh punched him in the chest twice. Lyle looked from the corpse with a bloody chest to Raleigh. Raleigh just shrugged and said, "Shepherd Powers." Ozzy looked at Luther. "I suggest you go elsewhere. Sedgwick is a nice sort of town, and you just aren't welcome." As they left, Ozzy shut the door behind them. One of the hinges broke, and the door hung sideways. "Susie, what the hell was in that ale you gave me?" Suzette smiled sheepishly. "Just something to give you an edge. It was a STR potion with a bit of side effect. But, maybe you should sit down now. And you do have more than 200 health, don't you?" Ozzy collapsed in a chair as he took the heavy hit of damage, but Raleigh was there to heal him up. Everyone pitched in to clean up the tavern. Then most went to bed. Raleigh and Ozzy were seated at the bar when Ben came in. He'd heard about the fight and was devastated he'd missed the fun, especially on hearing what the strength of Samson had done. The four talked late into the night, comparing notes and catching up. Luther whined so much about his arm hurting that the other three mercenaries killed him and sent him to respawn at Rowan Keep. It was dark, but the road was easy to keep to. They'd make it back before the others respawned. They all agreed Luther's plan sucked. They'd been told that some of the workers were really players in disguise with some nasty abilities. His plan of be annoying until they show themselves had worked for the most part. It was getting their asses kicked that no one had expected. The big one was a walking catastrophe. Luther was STR-7 and he'd been handled like a child. And the casual way he killed Dan with one punch was monstrous. It must be some sort of STR-build monk/assassin. Then the bartender took out one of them with poison, and that little guy killed Vanner with 2 punches to the chest. One of them had seen the knives strapped to his forearms. He came ready to murder people, so causing trouble and assaulting women folk. "I think we agree with the good people of Sedgwick. You aren't welcome around here. Gives the place a bad name." The voice came out of the darkness, surprising them, followed by a volley of arrows and crossbow bolts. 2 of the mercenaries dropped dead. One limped up the road with an arrow in his shoulder. Leave that one for the goblins. No need to be greedy. The next day dawned with 8 of Momco's mercenaries holding their heads and discussing why death penalties suck. Things got worse when their boss rode into the keep with a dozen horsemen. Timmy wanted an immediate debriefing on what had happened and had no sympathy for their suffering. He'd have to head up to Sedgwick himself and have a look around, a much more subtle look around. Hopefully the spy they'd placed in Billy's crew would have some helpful information on what he'd found. Grandma was giving him a chance to show what he could do, and he was damn well going to succeed. Several centuries before, you are certain that this will stem the tide of darkness that seeks to engulf our fair land and muddy the tides of magic. The speaker was a tall, handsome man clad in golden armor that looked like it had never seen combat, which it might not have. High Paladin Agravain had been busy down south, smiting evil during the war here in the north. He had made a habit out of missing the great battles of the day and was generally busy in the capital with one thing or another. Agravain was speaking to a pot-bellied man with graying hair, worn sandals, and a patched and faded robe. The archdruid didn't see why he should waste time with fancy clothes when he preferred to be wandering in the forests and getting his hands dirty, such as this project. He straightened up from planting a seedling and looked at the paladin on his white horse. Didn't say that, and if I had, surely wouldn't say it that way. Not a bard. So all this planting of trees and grass is just a waste of time. The druid planted another couple of trees and motioned for his helpers to move on without him. Well, maybe a waste of your time, since as far as I can tell that's all you do. But not a waste of mine. You came riding up on your fancy horse, which is suffering from roundworms by the way, then made some fool statement about tides and darkness. That told me you had no clue of what we were doing here. Agravain looked offended, his horse looked panicked, and his squire looked curious. The squire spoke up. I'm sure the High Paladin has a very good idea of what is going on here, but I must admit that I myself am a bit clueless. Could I beg an explanation of you? You are planting rowan trees and grasses. The archdruid nodded. At least someone would be carrying back word of what they did here to the capital. Think nothing of it, young squire. Teaching the clueless is always a noble task. Yes, we are planting rowan. It's a good tree, resistant to dark magics, and helps the other trees in the forest to resist the dark's influence. But we plant more than rowan. Hollywood for sure, as it will fight the dark magics and ground them, preventing the black wind from moving across the land. Oak lends the forest strength and vitality. Apple gives the forest fertility to spread and regrow from fire. And sassafras has its own magic. Old magic, older even than the dark. Together we plant a forest that the dark magic of Godobra cannot easily move through. And that is not grass, it is sedge. It loves the damp meadows and grows well in dark spots in the forest. Sedge is tough and hardy, and it actually loves the dark magic and absorbs it. The forest traps the dark, the sedge absorbs it. The High Paladin had grown bored and wandered off. Neither his squire nor the archdruid were bothered by this. The squire looked to where shepherds were moving huge herds of cattle up from the south. And the cows? They eat the sedge grass full of dark manna and poop it out. The archdruid nodded, happy to have an intelligent student. Indeed, that is their purpose. We can't stem the tide. What nonsense! What we can do, though, is deal with the problem. The cattle will process the sedge as part of their diet, naturally returning it to nurture the soil. Dark magics are unnatural owing to their birth in the demon realms. By making them part of the natural growth cycle, we neutralize them. Since we can't destroy the ancient demon cities, we can at least hide them from sight and use natural plants and beasts to limit their influence. Won't the dark magic harm the cattle? It generally has a bad effect on natural beasts and shortens their lifespans. The archdruid smiled. Ah, nice to deal with someone that studied at least the basics of the types of magic. Yes, ingesting dark magics will shorten their lifespan and speed up their growth and maturation. To combat that, we have modified the cattle we are moving to these meadows. Their reproduction rates are closer to rabbits now. They only live a couple of years naturally, but will breed constantly and mature quickly. They have a preference for foraging on the sedge. We'll be keeping track of how they breed for the first few decades, but I have hopes what we do here is both stable and sustainable. The squire nodded. Not as glorious as smiting demons. Not that I know, we always seem to miss that part, but it seems to be a better solution. Fighting the unnatural with nature. I'll make sure that a report of your activities here makes it to the Emperor's desk. The old druid nodded. That I am thankful for. So thankful I'll go cure that poor horse's innards. Bearing the weight of Agravain is enough burden for the poor beast without dealing with roundworms as well. Ozzy, Raleigh, and Ben had somehow ended upstairs in the garret Suzette had taken over. Isn't it wonderful? There are 2 dirty windows, a fireplace with a clogged flue, and huge piles of ancient stuff that I can sort through. Oh, and a teensy spot of the floor for my bedroll. The boys knew the trap they were in, but failed to move fast enough. Fatigue and drink slowed their minds, and made them susceptible to her smile and doe-like eyes. If only I had 3 strong men to help me clean it up. Raleigh looked at Ben and Ozzy. I smell a trap, boys. Be on your guard. Too late, Ben said resignedly. She has us surrounded. None of them were really tired. They had adapted to not sleeping much, and hauling a bit of trash downstairs wasn't a problem. Okay, how do you want to go about this, Ben? Ben loved solving problems like this, and Ozzy always pushed him into the lead where he excelled. Ben ran over to one of the windows on the triangular end walls. Let's see. I see the ridge beam, and yep, it has a steel eye to thread a rope through for a pulley. This wall is just pinned with wooden dowels. See? We can remove the window and surrounding wall, leaving an opening to haul things up and down. Second floor has the same. It's how you bring up heavy furniture and such. Raleigh, run, get a couple 100 feet of rope. We have tarps here covering the old furniture. Let's use those to take the trash down and haul it to the village fire pit. Suzette keeps what she wants, and anything else worth keeping we store in the barn. This place is pretty huge if we clean it out. It didn't take long to get started. Having 3 times the normal stamina and special abilities to haul, see in the dark, and forego sleep went a long way. Not that there weren't small pauses as certain treasures were uncovered. Moose. I see a moose head. Dibs. Raleigh began clearing a path to the treasure he'd found. It did indeed look something like a stuffed moose head. Ozzy could see it was probably a very ugly sedge beast with huge mutated horns. But if Raleigh wanted a moose, it was a moose. This is awesome. It's just like my great-grandfather's I have back in my storage in the other world. Ben found quite a few small things for his room. A bookshelf, several blankets and pillows, a candle holder, and a small chess table. Ozzy suggested keeping all the furniture in the barn and letting the other workers pick through it. The huts were cramped, but they'd been told that work on better housing would start soon. A ton of the items were just junk. Moth-eaten clothing, decrepit woolen blankets, a broken dartboard, a spinning wheel with rusted gears, tables and chairs from the tavern that had seen better days but had never been repaired. They started at one end and cleared to the other, sending load after load down to the courtyard and away to either the barn or the burn pile. Suzette kept a set of furniture for herself. There was a large bed that needed a new mattress, a vanity, wardrobe, and other homey pieces that she set up at one end of the now spacious room. She also kept 2 large work tables that were twins to the tables in the basement. She had ideas about doing some small brewing and alchemy on her own. Cleared out, Suzette's area still only took up less than half the space. Before they took all the furniture down, she approached Ozzy. You know, there's room for you up here too. Ozzy put a dumb smile on his face. Why, ma'am, this is so sudden. I'm flattered and tempted, but my mama always said stay clear of barmaids, valkyries, and women with bat wings until you know if they have honorable intentions. So I have to ask, just what are your intentions, ma'am? This got him a punch in the chest. No, I wasn't asking for that. Well, not now. Who knows? I'm just saying that you could move in up here and we could put up a dividing wall. Better than living in that little hut. You'd have an actual bed and room for some furniture. And a moose head. If Ozzy is living up here, he can take care of Mr. Moose for me. I like to sleep out with the animals, but Mr. Moose is a city feller. He likes a roof over his antlers. Ozzy hadn't even known Raleigh was nearby. He was getting sneakier all the time. Raleigh promptly hung the moose head in what was now Ozzy's half of the room. Ben laughed at the whole show. Give up, Ozzy. Who wouldn't like to have a moose for a roommate? Ozzy sighed. How do these things happen so fast? One minute I'm single, and the next I have to provide for a barmaid and a moose. I'll have to take a second job. Suzette smiled happily. I have one. It was one of the reasons I wanted you here. Derek will need a couple of bouncers now. With what people saw you do, you're perfect. You could just sit downstairs most nights and relax in the tavern and keep people polite. Ozzy sighed again. A moose, a barmaid, and a second job. You were right, Raleigh. It was a trap. Ben managed to get the removable section pinned back in place. The room still needed a heavy cleaning, but was much better. The 4 of them elected to all just sleep there tonight for a couple of hours and get up at the dawn. They'd deal with the burn pile and the extra furniture then. The rooster woke them as the sun was just peeking over the horizon. They all headed down to the kitchen to find Grania and Betty already baking. Suzette helped out and sent Raleigh and Ben to get the milk and eggs. Ozzy started picking up loads of trash and dumped it all in an area on the outskirts of town reserved for trash burning. He returned just in time for fresh bread and coffee. Billy was being uncharacteristically generous and had ordered a big breakfast for the workers. They each got trays of bread, eggs, meat pies, apple tarts, and a large pot of boiled coffee. This was greeted enthusiastically by the workers. Billy came out of his hut accompanied by his new assistant, whom he introduced. This is Layla, or Assistant Manager Vandergilt. She'll be working under me from now on. Her workers should be showing up in a couple of days. Ben, I'll need you to pick them up at Rowan Keep and guide them all here. He smirked, looking side-eyed at Layla. I'm hearing the roads are pretty treacherous these days. Jorges spoke up. We can get most of the road done today. It'll run straight up to those rocks from the edge of town by the barn, without a twist or turn. We cut a lot of trees to clear the route. We were wanting to know where you wanted the wood. It's fine there for now. What was low on Billy's priority for today? Building was for after he got past those rocks. If you have the people for it, turn what you can into large timbers for building and the rest into firewood for the smokehouse. Just put the piles along the roadside. Easy to grab it from there. Ozzy, you said the Legion was coming back down? Yep. I loaded them up a wagon of hides and another of meat. They seem happy with that and are sending 2 wagons back for more meat. Should clean us out except for the newest stuff. Raleigh, and I can just keep filling it up. No shortage of cows to turn into jerky. Fine. You and Raleigh keep working on that. Steady income is good and the Legion pays well. Billy looked at the crew and considered. They'd actually started to get a lot done. More, it seemed, the less direction he gave. He would just let them just get to work. Hey, Jorges, a thought occurs to me. We're going to need some new buildings for housing workers. Why don't you lay out some places for them? Nothing like these huts. I'm sure you and the carpenters can come up with some plans. Maybe 4 sleeping rooms and a common area for each. Use your imagination. You folks will move on into the new places, and we can use the huts for Layla and her crew. Speaking of that, Ozzy added, we helped Derek clear out some storage in the tavern, and he donated the old furniture to our crew. That can all go to the new places. It's stored over in the barn. Better and better. Billy liked things that cost him nothing. Okay, road building, new houses, and the slaughter of many sedge beasts. Betty and Suzette can cook us up lunch and dinner and bring it out to us. Betty nodded and Suzette smiled. You got it, Mr. Billy. The 2 of them walked back to the tavern. Most of the men stared at them. Not at Betty. She moved like your mother in combat boots. Suzette, by contrast, was walking with a roll to her hips that didn't seem humanly possible and might not be. With that, the workers headed out. Billy was left with a scowling Layla. Just who the hell was that little hussy? Layla had developed an instant dislike for Suzette. Normally, she held the center of attention in any group of men, but not this morning. She was invisible. Billy was well aware of this and enjoyed how upset Layla was. Anything to throw her off balance and keep her there. Her? That's just Suzette, one of the amazing hires I made. She's turning a great profit at the tavern after just a few days. Hell of a brewer. And did you see those ears? Just packing in the customers. I saw her ears. They need trimming. What the hell are you pulling bringing in non-humans? Nope, pure human when we started out. Some twist to the game. A few of the workers have heritage. She picked up some extra CHR and a hell of a set of ears. She sells a lot of ale, like I care about how she does it. Remember the bottom line, Layla? The bottom line is all that matters. Layla did her best to shrug and smile. She knew changes were coming soon. She'd be taking over. Billy would be gone, and she could deal with the little tramp then. Looking that good this early in the morning just wasn't allowed in Layla's world. Sir Timothy of Atheldurst, aka the Wonder Boy, 34, rode into Sedgwick with his squire and 3 men-at-arms. They rode slowly and smiled a lot, politely inquiring about an inn and stable for their mounts. Finding the inn, they paid for stabling and tipped the boy caring for their horses, then rented rooms for the next 2 weeks, paying for both food and lodging up front. Timmy had decided to play his visit polite and low-key, not wanting to have people link him with the group at the tavern the night before. If wasting some time doing low-level quests helped gain him some favor with the locals, then they'd waste a bit of time. He was here to gather information, not start a fight. Or rather, not start a fight yet. There was certainly one coming. "So what do we have so far?" he asked his squire, Joseph. "The usual, sir. Grania at the tavern fancies rabbit pie. We need to go kill 10 fat rabbits from the bunny meadow and take the bodies to the butcher by the barn. The alchemist is worried about blight. We need to check out a dozen places around the village and not find it." Timmy was confused. "Go look but not find it." "Correct, sir. We won't find any. Blight is an ancient evil that hopefully no one ever finds any sign of. This is a common quest in many of the villages. We go from place to place learning the layout. Any blight in the mill? Nope. Any blight at the old widow's farm? Nope. On and on. Typical intro quest. Interesting. What does a blight look like?" Joseph rolled his eyes. "Who the feth knows? It's some ancient boogeyman that no one alive has seen. And it's different in all the legends. Probably never existed. Anyway, after that, Farmer Brown needs us to pull 10 perfect turnips from his field. Perfect meaning gophers haven't eaten half of them. Extra points for killing gophers. The cobbler needs us to get him a red sedge beast hide, and the tavern owner, Derek, has a rat problem and needs rats killed in the subcellar. Weren't expecting a rare quest like rat slaying, were we, boys?" Everyone laughed. It seemed every town had a rat problem. Timmy just nodded. Pretty standard newbie questing, which is exactly what they were. Everyone in the game was a newbie. Of course, Timmy and his crew were currently at the top of level 5 and had scored a few boss kills, earning them some core skill points. They'd hit level 6 soon. If not from a good boss kill, then from killing some players, some ACME players to be precise. "All right then, my valiant companions, let's go about this quaint village and help out these good people. Save the tavern for last, and we can get to drinking early in the afternoon after the rats." Ben was happy to skip road building and get back to helping with the tanning. One project in particular. Ozzy had saved him some of the larger red hides from the sedge bulls. These had been soaked in water and had the hair removed as normal. One of the chapters in the courier book had laid out how to do brain tanning to produce superior leathers. The red sedge bull hides should produce a natural dark, red leather that was tough but still flexible. The difficult part was usually getting enough brains. But with how fast sedge beasts were getting slaughtered, that wasn't a problem. Ben had left Ozzy a barrel to dump the brains into. This wasn't pretty to watch. Ben had seen a lot of things in VR games, but watching Ozzy hammer a cow in the head, throw its body on a tree stump, chop off the head in one blow, and then use his bare hands to crack open the skull and plop the brains into a barrel was one of the most brutal. Raleigh disagreed. He thought the bar fight where Ozzy had punched a player's brain out through the back of his skull was worse. Ben really regretted missing that fight. The brains got pounded to break them up and then mixed with water to form a disgusting slurry. As each hide got laid down in the tanning pit, it got smothered in a good layer of brain slurry. Normally the tanner would then use a simple cantrip to speed up the process. After talking with Suzette, Ben had his own ideas on that. Bribing the tanners with a large lunch, he explained the idea. All 3 of them would use the cantrip at the same time and try to use up all of their mana. If it worked the way brewing had for Suzette, they might get something of a better quality. Or they might get leather sludge, but it was worth experimenting. The high-quality leather that Ben had coerced out of Ozzy had been turned into a fine courier's hat. It had sort of a buccaneer look to it with one side turned up. But for the long coat, breeches, boots, and vesting needed tougher leather, and quite a bit of it. Nothing seemed to go awry with the casting of the tanning cantrip other than each of them feeling a bit itchy and fatigued. Using up your mana didn't really tire them out, but they did feel uncomfortable until it regenerated. Mana was the slowest of the 3 stats to regenerate. All of the contract workers could regain their stamina in just 2 hours. This was much faster than normal players and one of the benefits that ACME had negotiated for them. It also meant they didn't get breaks on the job since they were rarely tired. A warrior would be horribly jealous of both the amount of stamina and how fast they got it back. Of course, a warrior had lots of special abilities to make good use of their stamina. Contract workers could only use it for doing work. Normally, a player could regain their stamina in about 6 hours. Likewise, the workers healed faster and could regenerate injuries better than a player. They took a lot of injuries from the work they did, but were usually at full health again by the end of the day. Losing a finger to an accident hurt like hell and was disturbing, but less so when it grew back overnight. Players could heal injuries like a missing body part only by death, and it added to both the respawn time and the length of the death penalties after respawning. And where a contract worker could replenish their health in 4 hours, less with a meal and a nap, the players took nearly 12 hours. Of course, players usually had access to a healer, potions, and other means of wound recovery. Mana was pretty slow for everyone. It normally took a full 24 hours to regain your full mana pool from empty. Crafting cantrips took only a fraction of that. But Ben's method meant that the tanners were only casting once each day. Sort of mass production method, and hopefully higher quality. There's still a lot of scraping and stretching of hides to do. This gave them more time for that part, or for taking a nap and eating to speed up mana regeneration. Players with mage classes looked forward to Tier 2 abilities that increased mana regeneration. There were also some options that could be bought with core skill points. Of course, using those for abilities and not stats delayed a player from reaching Tier 2. As usual, the discussion on the forums was endless. After a couple of days, soaking in brain slurry, the hides were cleaned in water and wrung out. The stonemasons had crafted a large marble cylinder and a polished marble slab for the next step. Ben laid each wet hide on the slab and then spent an hour smoothing it by rolling the 200-pound stone rolling pin back and forth until the wet hide was much thinner and smooth on both sides. After that, he pinned the 5 sedgebull hides to the walls of the smokehouse. The smoke would act as a preservative. It was going to take several days for the hides to cure, and then he could finally get started on crafting an actual courier's uniform. Timmy and crew made short work of the bunnies and gophers and failed to find any signs of blight. They hauled the dead rabbits over to the butcher by the barn. The butcher shop wasn't what they expected. They found a large man in a bloody apron dismembering a cow using just a cleaver in his bare hands. His butcher block was the remains of a large oak that had been cut to leave a 2-foot-high stump several feet across. The butcher cut off the head, tore the skull apart, and tossed the brains into a barrel. The guts were poured on the ground and then shoveled into a large pit of rotting meat. The lower parts of the legs and the tail were snapped off with his bare hands and the hide stripped off the carcass. After this gory display, he tossed the carcass on his shoulder and picked up the hide and tossed both into a huge smokehouse. Timmy's squire, Joseph, spoke in a low voice as they observed this. What a fething monster. And he bets he's a sub-boss in some quest. The others just nodded. Never turn your back on a butcher, and never eat the sausage. Rules every gamer followed. The butcher wiped bloody hands on a bloody apron. What can I do for you young lads? Bunnies or a hide? Both. Ozzy had gotten used to occasionally taking in or giving out quest items. But it made sense. There wasn't another butcher in town. Both, my good man. Do we owe you for the hide? Ozzy grabbed a cured hide from the pile in the barn. Nope. If you're turning into bunnies for Grania, the reward covers the cost of the hide, both the same. Convenient that way. Here you go. Just toss the bunnies over there with the others. Been a good day for Grania, bad day for bunnies. But there will be rabbit stew and rabbit meat pie at the inn tonight, and meat muffins at the tavern. Timmy was happy to see neither quest had subquests to do. He was looking forward to an ale at the tavern after a bit of rat killing. Yes, I like convenient. But here, some copper for your trouble. He nodded to Joseph, who took 10 copper from his purse and handed it to Ozzy. Joseph made note of the butcher's hand. It was at least twice the size of his and heavily muscled. Definitely at least a sub-boss. They'd have to look for a quest hook, see if anyone had died mysteriously or gone missing. The butcher thanked him politely and smiled. Joseph was sure it was a fake smile. The bastard even started humming as he walked over to the next cow being led to slaughter. As the butcher took the cow by one of its horns and held it steady, he brought a stone hammer down on its skull, killing it instantly. Dragging it over to the stump, he cut off its head. Timmy's crew took their hide and left. They'd seen the scene once, and that was enough for them. Jorges was happy with his road. It had taken a 14-hour workday, but they'd finished. Caesar himself will be proud of this road. It ran straight and just slightly downhill for the 3 miles between the northern edge of Sedgwick and the 2 ominous standing stones. It was wide enough for 2 wagons to pass each other and not tangle their loads. 6 inches higher in the center, water would move towards the edges. After the trees were gone and the roadway laid out with rods and twine, one crew had started digging the roadbed. At a little over 2 feet, they hit hard-packed gravel and earth. This had been rammed tight and covered with 6-inch of river stones the size of a fist. Following this was 6-inch of finer gravel and sand. The masons followed with 12-inch slabs of stone. It would do for now. Once he had more time, Georges wanted to burn limestone and make a layer of cement to lay the stonework on and to fill in any crevices between. They'd also add raised footpaths on either side. All the extra stone and building materials were left in piles along the edge of the roadway. There were so many wood beams and timbers that the low piles made continuous lines along the road edge. For now, it was an open-air lumberyard which would all get used when they constructed their housing. Several of them had experience in medieval buildings. They made plans to work on them every day after work. Those who worked got the first houses. Those who didn't could sleep in huts. The evening turned darker. Clouds were forming. They headed to the tavern again, looking forward to good food and drink. Billy and Derek had assured them there would not be a repeat of last night's harassment. If any of them had been able to see what was happening near the standing stones, they would have moved much faster. If one had the sight to see ambient mana, they would see that dark glowing ooze was starting to pool in front of the standing stones and small rivulets were running down the road. For hundreds of years, the trees of the forest of the Druids had hemmed in the dark magic. It still seeped out of the city, but could not spread. At first, it had just lain dormant and was slowly absorbed first by the sedge and then by the cattle that came to be known as sedge beasts. But as more and more piled up, the forest became a deep reservoir holding vast amounts. The runic stones used up some of it, as they were designed to absorb mana from the environment, but they had their limits, and the barrier was rarely tested. The 50-foot gap in the forest was allowing the pin-up mana to start pouring out. Dark magic was thick and slow to move, unlike its nemesis light magic. It took time for it to get untangled from tree roots and bark, but as it did, it flowed faster and faster. The huge ring around the city provided pressure to move the current along. As more and more mana emptied from the forest, the rivulets of ooze became streams and then merged to become a black river that flowed down the road. The dark magic wanted to be free to behave as it was intended, free to warp nature and fuel the spells of the tainted. But though free of the forest, it was still constrained to a single path. It couldn't seep through the thick stone of the slabs that crowned the road. The piles of sacred wood piled along the edges of the road kept the river contained to the road. It could only move further and further down the road to the village, gaining speed. The first of the flow ended up by the barn near midnight. No one was awake, but many people struggled with horrible dark dreams. Animals fled or cowered where they could, hoping they were passed by. The river split and flowed across the town, finding many interesting places it could go to. The main branch just bypassed the town and ran through a small meadow where zombie rabbits were contentedly munching on grass. One larger rabbit spit the offending greenery from its mouth. Its eyes glowed, and it mumbled, "Brains, we want brains." The Black River moved past the bunny meadows and into their burrow, moving further and further down, finding lower levels where it could pool. The under-rodent smiled in her sleep and dreamed of eating fat humans and tasty dwarfs. Down into root cellars and basements the dark magic went, finding places to hide from the light. One tendril reached the old well beneath the tavern and moved down into it. Other tendrils abandoned their quests and also moved into the old well. The new well was avoided. The runes Alistair had placed on it to keep the water pure stymied the dark magic from moving into it. The meat pit, where Ozzy through the unusable parts of the sedge beasts, attracted a large stream. It flowed into the dead meat, finding it good. Raleigh also found the dead meat good, too. Like he'd done for the last few nights, he was grilling up pan after pan of fried sedge beast liver, kidney, lungs, and hearts. It was nice to relax out here and not have to keep up a disguise. His friend might have recognized him, but just barely. His eyes were multifaceted orbs that let him see in complete darkness. The blades on his arms were the size and sharpness of a pair of katana. His scaly skin changed color depending on what was behind him. Shepherd powers were so cool. He felt great tonight. He could feel the mana in the air change. He stood in the flow, absorbing it into him, feeding his little buddy inside of him until he was finally full and healed. They were both full up. Might be time to find a place to take a nap. Maybe after breakfast? He was full up on tasty fried sedge beast, but he'd hate to skip muffins with the crew. And who wanted to miss a beautiful night like this? Rat killing had been uneventful. The tavern keeper, Derek, had taken the group down to the basement where he brewed beer, and from there to an old door that led to a long, narrow room filled with broken barrels, smashed tables, and chairs missing their legs. It looked like generations of tavern keepers had put things down here with the idea they'd get around to fixing things eventually. Derek explained there were a lot of cracks in the walls. It was old construction the current tavern had been built on top of. Rats kept coming in through the cracks from somewhere to get at his malt and grain. The quest he offered them gave a smidgen of EP, a few coins, and a flagon of ale and a meat pie each. And of course, his appreciation for a job well done. They took the quest and were finished a half hour later. Coming up from the basement, Joseph hoisted up the brace of rodents by their tails, and Timmy yelled out, "Your rat problems are over. Derek, where shall we dispose of the evil vermin?" A couple of farmers were having a cold ale at a table. They'd barely looked up. Derek didn't seem to be around, but who was behind the bar got Timmy's interest immediately. The girl was striking. The town of Sedgwick suddenly became much more interesting. She came around the bar and looked at the rats intently. My, but those do look fierce. Usually I prefer flowers, but a bouquet of dead rodents is so sweet of you. She smiled at Joseph, who stood frozen, staring at her. Oh my, the quiet type. Well, don't worry. We'll do some small talk when you come back in. Just take those rats out back and toss them over the fence into the pig trough. Those porkers eat anything. Joseph just nodded and headed out the door. Timmy took a step forward and bowed. "Greetings, fair damsel. I am Sir Timothy of Ethelderst. I am a fledgling paladin, seeking to do good in the land with the aid of my squire Joseph and my trusty men-at-arms, David, Hugh, and Lewis. If you have need of me, please simply ask. I am at your service." Timmy had yet to meet the girl that shiny armor and a high cichar couldn't sway. This one certainly swayed, but in a way that made Timmy forget what his next line was. She stepped close and allowed him to kiss her hand. So polite and generous. "I'm sure I have a service I need you to help me with." She batted her eyes at him and then looked demurely at the floor. "It's a very strenuous service, though. You'll need all your stamina. Are you sure you aren't tired after your heroic battle?" David rolled his eyes, knowing where this was going. He grabbed Lewis and Hugh and headed for the bar, joined by Joseph as he returned. The barmaid smiled at Timmy. "Glad to hear that. I'm anxious to get started, if you know what I mean. How about I get your friends their beer, and then we go spend some time downstairs?" She turned and hurried to the taps, pouring each man a large mug of dark ale and yelling for meat pies from the kitchen for them. She looked over at Timmy, and he was surprised to get a quest message. Tavern Quest Part 2 of 3. Suzette, the lonely barmaid, is in need of help only you can give her. Rewards are in increased favor with Suzette along with other rewards based on performance of the services. Accept Y/N, second of 3 parts? Oh, he saw where this was going. He'd have to make sure his services were of the highest quality. She took his hand and led him downstairs and into the brewing area. He went to sweep her off her feet, but she moved away from him in a swirl of skirts. No time for that now, Sir Knight. You have to haul these kegs upstairs. So glad you could help." She indicated 4 kegs with the familiar label of Bludgeon Brew. "Bring these up to me at the bar, and I'll pour you a fresh blood for your reward." The kegs were heavy. Timmy was glad of his extra STR. His companions wisely said nothing. By the time he was done, they'd finished their beers. They were laughing with Suzette, and Joseph was telling the story about fighting the named hamster they'd found in the Thornwood. Suzette poured a beer from the new keg of Bludgeon Brew and set it down for him. "Here you go. My stalwart helper, first brew of the new batch. You can be my taste tester. Timmy eyed the flagon suspiciously. Taste test bludgeon brew? It was always the same. That was the point. No matter where you were in the world, you could count on it being the second-rate, cheap swill that made it famous. This beer had a dark color and a bit more foam than usual. He took a sip and his eyes opened wide. It was blood for sure, but good blood, and he could feel a kick to it. Usually, it took 6 to 8 to even give him a buzz. This was at least twice as strong. He poured half the flagon down his throat and smiled. Damn good, but you're sure this is blood? Suzette smiled, glad the new recipe was appreciated. She poured a free flagon for the rest of Timmy's crew. Oh, it's bludgeon brew. I use their special recipe that gives it that distinctive flavor. She looked around, conspiratorially, and lowered her voice to a stage whisper. But I had a bit of local malt and a secret ingredient. I'm calling this brew Blood Dark. Timmy finished his flagon and brought out coins. Blood Dark it is then. Let's have another round. His crew called it an early night. Joseph reminded him of their plan to lay low for a few days. Just as well, the lonely barmaid seemed to be not getting his rather direct hints. They retired to the inn for dinner and an early night. Once alone in his room, he spent some time going over his character. To date, he'd been in on 29 boss kills for a total of 37 core skill points gained. Momko was spending a fortune buying information on bosses from the various guilds and sending out their own scouting teams. Besides his personal crew, Timmy had a support group of another 20 adventurers doing various tasks. He and his crew ground out EP every day for hours. They tested skills, went over new builds, and more than once chucked it all and started over. Name: Tam White EWB 34. Level 5. Class: Custom. Shining Paladin. Base: per level. From stats: Total: Health: 100, 100, 150, 750. Stamina: 100, 50, 150, 500. Mana: 100, 50, 240, 590. Stat: Level: Cap: EP earned. Bonus: Total: STR: 8, 9, 3000/3600. Plus 1, 9. DX: 5, 5. 2000 of 1000. 5. AGI: 5, 5. 2000 of 1000. 5. Con: 5, 5. 2000 of 1000. 5. INT: 2, 5. 275. 2. WAS: 5, 5. 3000 of 1000. Plus 1. 6. CHR: 5, 5. 2000 of 1000. 5. PER: 2, 5. 225. 2. Taint: Restricted. RAD: 0, 5. 10. Plus 1. 1. Core skills: Attack, Defense, Melee: 30 plus 30. Mitigate: 30 plus 30. Ranged: 5 plus 5. Evasion: 15 plus 15. Magic: 5 plus 5. Resistance: 20 plus 20. Crafting: Harvest, Armor crafting: 15. Animal products: 0. Skill 2: 0. Herbs, flowers, bark, fungus, fruit. Timber: 0. Skill 3: 0. Minerals, gems, stone: 0. Core skill points: Earned, Used, Converted: 38, 17, 21. Skills: Stat: Level, EP, PS/T. Mace: STR: 5, 1000. Primary: Healing Aura, WS: 5, 1000. Primary: Poison Resistance. Con: 5, 1000. Primary: Sidestep, AGI: 5, 1000. Primary: Rapier, DX: 5, 1000. Primary: Battle Leader, CHR: 5, 1000. Primary: Powerful Blow, STR: 5, 1000. Secondary: Minor Healing Touch, WS: 5, 1000. Secondary: Mental Resistance, INT: 1, 75. Secondary: Furious Charge, AGI: 5, 1000. Secondary: Heavy Armor. Con: 5. 1000. Secondary. Shining Aura. CHR. 5. 1000. Secondary. Shield. STR. 5. 1000. Tertiary. Undead Slayer. WS. 5. 1000. Tertiary. Demon Slayer. RAD. 0. 10. Tertiary. Ancient Lore. Religion. INT. 2. 200. Tertiary. Armor Repair. DX. 5. 1000. Tertiary. Detail Oriented. PER. 2. 225. Tertiary. The list of options for a custom build was limited. There was a balance to it. If you built a custom class, you could get exactly the skills you wanted, but your core skills were basic. Take a class like Warrior that had restrictions on skills, and you could select a lot of interesting skills that would enhance your class. Custom core skills. Description. Cost. Identification 1. Gives information on an item or creature of levels 1 to 5, even if you're a lower level. A prerequisite for identification 2. 10. Increase health 1. Plus 50 points to health score. 5. Increase mana 1. Plus 50 points to mana score. 5. Increase stamina 1. Plus 50 points to stamina score. 5. Tier 1 ceiling increase. Raises ceiling on maximum of a stat to 1 point over current tier cap. Max of 5 points may be spent per stat. Cost is 1 for level 6, 2 for level 7, 3 for level 8, 4 for level 9, and 5 for level 10. Variable. Melee damage 1. Your weapon melee weapon attacks do more damage. Damage plus 10. 5. Ranged damage 1. Your ranged weapon attacks do more damage. Damage plus 10. 5. Spell damage 1. Your weapon attacks do more damage in melee. Damage plus 10. 5. Melee damage 1. Your weapon attacks do more damage in melee. Damage plus 10. 5. Magical mitigation 1. You take less 3 less damage from magical attacks. 5. Physical mitigation 1. You take less 3 less damage from physical attacks. 5. Plus attack core skill. Increase 1 attack score by plus 5, capped at double starting skill level. 1. Plus defense core skill. Increase 1 defensive score by plus 5, capped at double starting skill level. 1. Plus harvest core skill. Increase 1 harvesting score by plus 5, capped at double starting skill level. 1. Plus craft core skill. Increase 1 crafting score by plus 5, capped at double starting skill level. 1. Replace a tier 1 skill with a new skill at level 0. The old skill and EP earned with it is lost forever. The new skill must be one you can normally take. 1. Physical mitigation 2. You take less an additional 5 less damage from physical attacks. Total of 8. 10. Oath of Light. Earn the Oath of Light by slaying a demon. Plus 1 rad. 5. Magical Sense. You can almost see magic. Sometimes taste it in the air. 2. Assuming you earn the core skill points, of course. A casual player or crafter might not even encounter a boss. They took a lot of time to find, either following up rumors or exploring new areas. Maybe when dungeons were found and opened up it would be easier, but for now the hunt for elusive bosses took a lot of time. Luckily, he had a lot of help from Grandmother. She had scout teams out finding bosses for him. His team just had to travel around and then not die when facing off against them. This didn't go over well with the other part of the family, but Timmy had long ago ceased to care what they thought. How to spend them was something he was constantly thinking on, and the constant stream of advice from his advisory team had long ago got tiring. Some things had been obvious. He had raised his cap on STR by 4, with the 1 bonus point that would eventually get him to level 10 in Street. It was highly suspected that having 1 or more stats at 10 was part of the requirements to move to Tier 2. That had cost a whopping 10 points. 21 points had been spent raising his core skills. This was essential. Without raising the core skills, his abilities just wouldn't get better. Lots of debate on this one, though. If raising core skills was essential and took core skill points from bosses, then how in hell did a casual player get past Tier 1? Maybe special quests? Still so much they didn't know. Oath of Light was a must. Getting his first point of Radiance went a long way to opening up more quests from the local Paladins guilds. 5 points well spent. and meeting the requirements to take it had been difficult. Another paladin had reported to their network that the ability was offered in the capital. Disappointingly, it wasn't available to him. Go do some great deed and earn your light. Great deeds included killing very evil things like demons. Demons were scarce, but his crew did manage to take care of a warlock who was terrorizing a small village. His imp familiar also counted as a demon, and that was enough to let him by the skill. This also gave him his only points in demon slaying. It had seemed good at the time. It was a restricted skill only available if you also took lore, ancient religions, and undead slaying. He was sure in the long run he'd need it. But demons weren't something you just found running around in the woods. He still had 8 points to spend. He'd been debating for quite a bit, but it was obvious that he wasn't at the top of Tier 1 yet. There would be more bosses to kill and more points to spend. 6 more points went into raising his core skills. Almost done with those. The last 2 points went in a magical sense. He so wanted to increase his CHR. His ego was still stung by being outsmarted by the lonely NPC barmaid. She acted almost real. Well, not quite. Real girls never turned down his advances that way. It was good to be rich and handsome. Next boss that went down, he'd pump up his CHR and come back for another try. He suspected he needed to get at least CHR and possibly WIS to 10 for Tier 2. As soon as he confirmed how to spend his points, his head began throbbing with an intense migraine. Something wasn't right. No way should he be in this much pain in a game. He threw open his window to get fresh air, but choked on the air coming in. Some horrid stench assaulted him. What was going on? Far, far away, he heard the pealing of a bell. A golden bell in a white tower. He saw it in his mind's eye. He saw the warriors in white and gold armor mount their war horses and thunder out the gate. He wanted to go with them. The darkness rises. Once again, dark magic is loose in the world. As of the light, you are called upon to face the forces of dark magic when it rises in the world. Will you join the crusade against the dark? Y/N? He accepted, of course. Obviously, spending those last few points had put him over some threshold and triggered a new quest. Possibly even a quest to push him up to Tier 2. His headache was gone. He could still smell the stench, but he felt like he knew the direction it was coming from. Time to wake the crew and get moving. There was probably some boss out there roaming around the town that needed killing. Hopefully it would be a challenge. Suzette couldn't breathe. There was no air in the capsule, and nothing coming in from the nutrient tubes. She pounded on the top cover, but it was latched shut. She hit the panic button and yelled the safe word that should have alerted someone, but nothing worked. She screamed and woke to Ozzy holding her and trying to wake her up. She was drenched in sweat and couldn't talk. It took several minutes until the dream faded. He held a glass of water to her mouth, and she drank. Sorry, not your fault, Susie. No, but still I woke you up. I didn't invite you to take half the room because I needed a nursemaid. She got up and started throwing on clothes. Bah, sleep doesn't matter to me much. Raleigh and I have been staying up most nights doing stupid things to level up some skills. 2 or 3 hours and I'm good to go. Wasn't sleeping well anyway. Feel edgy. Ozzy tossed on his own work clothes. He'd worn through too many pairs of pants and shirts made from the local cloth, and had some leggings and a sleeveless tunic made of sedgebeast hide. Ben had helped get that done with their leatherworkers. The thick pants resisted the wear and tear he put on clothing. Heavy leather gloves and his blood-stained apron completed the outfit. It was part of his daily routine now to clean and oil all his leather after each day's work. So then, what are we doing up so early? Ozzy got his tools. It felt wrong to not have the 2 cleavers and the meat hook in the apron and the hammer on his belt. I'm going to go start some new kegs in the basement. How about you help move some of the finished kegs upstairs for me? I'll make us breakfast first, but you have to get the eggs. Descending to the tavern's first floor, they heard voices outside. Through a window, they saw Sir Timothy run by, followed by his party of followers. All were outfitted for a fight. I guess they can't sleep either. Suzette mused. I'm not sharing breakfast with them, replied Ozzy. Bad enough, I have to brave a henhouse in the dark. Ozzy stepped out the back of the inn and crossed the courtyard towards the henhouse. It wasn't there. A few broken boards and bloody feathers were all that remained of it. The stench of rotting meat was suddenly overwhelming. He started to turn at a noise when he was hit hard enough to knock him through the air. He landed in the street next to Sir Timothy and his squire, Joseph. You have been hit by a charnel demon. You take 80 damage from the blow and another 20 from impact with the ground. Because of your mitigation, you take 50 damage from the blow and just leave a dent in the road. You are stunned for 1 round. Ozzy shook his head to clear it. Timmy stepped over the top of him and advanced on the monster. Hugh dragged Ozzy out of the way. Lewis grumbled, "Meat monster and a butcher. 10 to 1 he's been building it in a lab, and it got out of control. Told you it was the butcher." Everyone received a quest notification. Something is rotten in Sedgwick. The dark magics have found a place of slaughter and infected the discarded pile of parts and pieces with the essence of an ancient demon. The charnel demon will devour all in its path to grow stronger. If not stopped, it will turn Sedgwick into a charnel pit and kill all within. Defeating such a foe is a defining quest for a follower of the light. Timmy tried to identify it and failed. Oh shit, it's at least level 6. This is a tier 2 elite boss. Timmy turned with a huge smile. A big boss for a change. We have the video running, Joe. Had it going from the time we made plans in the inn. I'll edit the boring shit later and send it off. Joseph bent and tapped Ozzy on the head, tossing him a small healing spell. Wakey, wakey, Mr. Butcher. You're safe, and Sir Timothy is going to go smite that monster. Can you fill us in on any details? Ozzy shook his head and stood up. Monster? Something killed the chickens and hit me. Louis knocked an arrow. Well, that's about the typical intel we get from the locals. Let's just go light this thing up. There was a crash and the sound of breaking wood as something huge broke through a building and onto the street. What looked like a walking pile of meat and bone turned and headed towards the edge of the village where the workers' huts were. Ozzy pulled out 2 cleavers and started jogging after it. Timmy laughed. Okay, we have some NPC help. It's heading towards the crappy end of town. Be a bit careful, Hugh. Slums catch fire easily. Hugh just smiled. Think of it as me doing my part for urban renewal. They can get rid of the slums and build something better. Maybe a nice apartment building or a mall. Timmy turned to the group and spoke lower. Okay, circle it up and group shout for the cameras. The group formed a rough circle and extended their hands. For glory, for loot, for the light, for Momco. The crew jogged down the street after the monster. Suzette had just stepped out of the tavern and watched the little chant with amusement until the last word. Her thoughts spun in circles as the blackness of the dream returned. Momco, Momco. Oh, that little shit with a shiny smile. Damn, damn, damn. She took a deep breath and began running after them. She had to find Ozzy. The charnel demon headed quickly for the area with the most people. It had carelessly hit the first prey too hard and lost it, but these next were easy. Several were in each of the pitiful little buildings. No protection at all. It charged through the wall of the first hut. Tendrils of muscle grabbed for the 4 workers sleeping inside. Roger and Aaron never made it out of bed, both pinned and killed before they knew what was going on. Sai was a light sleeper and almost made it to the door before a long bone spike pinned him to the wall. Lyle woke and just screamed twice before a huge knob of bone came down on his head. The demon crashed through the front door, dragging bodies behind it. Outside, several of the workers were up, one with a lantern. They watched in horror as what looked like a creature made of bone and meat stumbled from the ruined hut on several misshapen legs. It was already beginning to absorb the bodies into itself. One massive arm ended with a bone knob, the other in a 3-foot-long bone spike. Ropey tendrils sprouted as it crawled forward, moving towards the group. The workers scattered, screaming. Ozzy came up at a sprint and brought both cleavers down, chopping deep into the side of the creature facing him. His efforts got its attention, the huge bony arms swinging at him, and again knocking him away from it. Luckily, Hugh was there to soften his landing. Charnel Demon critically pummels you for 300 crushing damage. You mitigate some of the blow and take 270 points of damage. Hugh was less than happy to have Ozzy slam into him. His light frame couldn't take much damage. His total health was only 225 when healthy. Crushed between Ozzy's flung body and the side of a hut, he took over half his health in one blow. Timmy barely noticed. These were the moments he lived for. He slammed his mace into the creature using crushing blow, breaking bone, and making a large dent. The small amount of light magic each of his blows added sizzled as it met a demon. Finally, a real demon. He hadn't been able to raise his demon slayer skill at all because of a lack of demons to kill. David's overhand slash with his great sword performed better than the mace, slicing off one of the ropey tendrils. Lewis sent an arrow deep into the creature that it didn't even notice. The demon seemed to gather itself. Then a huge maw opened up in its center, and it screamed. Its aura of fear and aura of intimidation washed over the players. Timmy and David laughed. Hugh looked a bit nervous, but still readied his firebolt. Lewis turned white and dropped his bow and arrow, covering his ears and closing his eyes. The effect on the fleeing workers was hard to notice. The Be Happy buff, they were underdoing a lot to negate the auras. The deadliness of the demon was shown again as Althea ran from her hut, only to be speared by a long shard of bone and dragged close to the thing. A ropey appendage wrapped around her throat. Ozzy, I am so disappointed. Did you start a fight without me? How often have we had this talk? Not enough, I guess. Wow, you guys are looking rough. I'll heal you up. Raleigh had run up next to Ozzy and Hugh. Putting a hand out to help Ozzy up, he used Transfer Life to heal part of their wounds. Wow, you really took a hit, Ozzy. What did he nail you for? Ozzy raised his voice to warn everyone. The damn thing can crit for 300, be careful. Hugh turned pale. That was a one-shot kill for him. Dying in the middle of the fight like this would really lose him some pay. He launched his firebolt. Where it touched the meat monster, it sizzled, and a huge slab of cooked meat peeled off. David sliced through the tentacle, holding Althea with his dagger, but she was already dead. Timmy's mace seemed to bounce off the creature. He couldn't seem to land a damaging attack without burning stamina on crushing blow. Worse, the slashes and burns on the demon were fading as it quickly regenerated its health. Suzette was watching. Where Timmy could only sense when magic was around, she could plainly see it and maybe know what it was doing. She saw the steady stream of dark mana coming from the road to Godobra. The demon was absorbing it and using the mana heal itself. Timmy braced as the creature turned towards him. The knob bone arm pummeled him even through his shield. One of the severed tendrils wrapped around Timmy's leg and began crushing it. Charnel Demon hits you for 150 crushing damage. Your mitigation stops some of the blow, and you only take 100. You take 40 crushing damage as a tendril wraps around your leg. The demon went to shoot at Hugh, but the shot from the spear arm went wild as a whip wrapped around the arm and pulled its aim to the side. Oh shit, this thing is strong. Ben suddenly found himself flying through the air as the creature jerked the arm around, flinging him into a hut. Suzette sent a solar arrow at the creature. She didn't think it had eyes, so she aimed for the maw area. Her sunlight hit inside of the creature's open mouth, and it shuddered, and then shrieked in pain. It started moving towards her. Continuously shrieking when someone is trying to stab you in the mouth with sunlight probably wasn't a winning strategy for the demon. Suzette launched another arrow of sunlight into it. It was a low-level spell, doing only 20 damage normally, but it was highly effective against this creature. Lots of NPC help, thought Timmy. Time to form a raid. He paused his attacks to send raid invites to everyone outside of his group that was fighting, and simultaneously get Lewis back in the fight by hitting everyone with a bravery buff. Lewis seemed to shake off the fear, but the raid didn't form. You may not form raids using players from rival factions. The following players were rejected. Suzette, the lonely barmaid. Raleigh, the shepherd. Benjamin, the courier. Ozzy, the butcher. Timmy was surprised. Players? These were all ACME players. What the hell were they doing posing as NPCs? Overall, though, this was a bonus. He was getting their DPS tossed into the fight, but they wouldn't get the experience, and he didn't have to share. No way could they out DPS his crew. Raleigh yelled to Ben. Hey, Ben, I've got it on good authority that the dark magic crap pouring down the road and healing this thing doesn't like Rowan or Hollywood. Hates that nasty sassafras, too. Can you get some of the guys to dam it up? Lots of wood in the piles. Ben ran to find help. He never had figured out how Raleigh knew things. But he often did, and was usually spot on. He grabbed Jorges, Chad, and several others that were watching the fight. "We have a job, boys. Don't ask questions. We need to pile a ton of wood across the end of the road and dam things up." They ran off. The charnel demon closed half the distance to Suzette as she cast a third solar arrow cantrip at it. Half the distance was far too close. Its spike arm centered on her and fired, sending the long bone harpoon through her leg. The ropey tendril connecting the harpoon to the creature retracted, knocking her off her feet and dragging her to it. Too far away to help, Raleigh and Ozzy could only look on in horror as the bony fist came down on her. Everyone saw the notification. The dying light. An ally of the light has perished. The dark grows stronger. Creatures allied to the dark will now do 20% more damage in your battle. 20%, holy shit. Timmy yelled at his squire. "Joseph, get her up. The thing is too strong already. I can't take another 20% on top of what it's dishing out already." Raleigh added cheerfully, "It should be strong. That's a level 7 elite boss. Want to see?" Raleigh shared what his identification skill had showed him. Charnel Demon. Elite level 7. Current health. 1880/2000. Stats. Resistances. Weaknesses. STR. 13. Piercing, crushing. Light magic. Dex. 6. Holy magic. Con. 13. Attacks. Abilities. Pummel. Fear aura strong. Bone spike. Intimidation aura medium. Entangle. Demonic bargain. You're all healed up, Ozzy. Keep the Bernie guy alive. I love the smell of burning demon. I'll go help Wonder Boy over there. Hugh sneered as he launched another firebolt. "Help how?" "Call Bo Peep and her lamb." Raleigh cheerfully answered him. "Nah, the lamb would be overkill. We can save her for the big monsters." Raleigh stepped forward and stood with his feet in a wide stance. He held his arms out wide, hands flat. Go, Super Shepherd powers. Activate." He slammed his arms in and crossed them on his chest. Raleigh started to glow. Even the demon paused as this happened. Raleigh opened his huge red, multifaceted eyes. Black shell-like armor covered most of his body, and long, sharp blades of chitin erupted from his arms. He ran forward and severed 2 of the demon's tentacles with 2 hits. Hugh quickly resolved to never make another shepherd joke again, and to buy Raleigh a beer later. He also needed to go find out about Tice Super Shepherd stuff. Holy crap, he was doing a lot more damage than Timmy was. Joseph used the diversion to drag Suzette's body out of the way and started a revivification spell. He hoped Timmy was right about this. He was dumping a third of his mana on this spell. The demon got back to work. Its spike missed David. It didn't care. Time was on its side. The light was weak in the baby paladin, and the damage any of them dealt was being healed by the wonderful power pouring into it. It brought its pummeling fist down onto Timmy, denting his shield again, and sending a wave of pain into his arm. The chopped-off tentacles were still part of it, and under its control it sent them moving like meaty snakes towards any of the little ants staying out of its range. Timmy screamed as the tentacle on his leg constricted again. You are pummeled for 180 damage. You take 130 after mitigation. You take 50 constricting damage. Shit. Burn my leg, Hugh. The damn tentacle is about to break it. Hugh really hoped the audio picked up that order. Anyone watching the video was about to see him launch an attack on his boss. The firebolt hit Timmy in the back of his leg. The tentacle burned and quit moving, falling off his leg. The metal of his greaves was crushed and dented, and the under armor burned away, leaving a bleeding and charred wound. Ozzy chopped at 2 tentacles heading for Hugh, turning them into small chunks of meat. Lewis wasn't so lucky. Further away, he dodged 1 tentacle only to have another wrap around his throat. He died 2 rounds later as he was swarmed by 3 tentacles. A member of your party has died. Lewis was killed by. Get him back up, Joseph. Timmy didn't like losing party members. It was dramatic, but it really ruined a group photo with their kills at the end of the fight. That was the main reason for bringing a cleric along disguised as a squire. In the easy fights, they just relied on the potions in their satchels. Looked better in the video. Joseph left Suzette's body. I'll try, but she has to accept the revivification before I cast it again. Otherwise, I lose the mana for nothing. This is why Joseph hated working with people outside his group. The floozy probably died and then started playing Candy Crush before she saw his revivification message. He'd get to Lewis, and if she hadn't accepted, he'd cut her loose. Timmy was really burning resources now. He'd gone defensive, not using Crushing Blow and saving the stamina to dodge with Sidestep. This strategy wasn't working well. He wasn't dodging many of its attacks. The demon must have a huge attack chance for it to be canceling so much of his evasion. His health was way too low. He started burning his mana for heals, hoping Hugh and David could put a dent in the thing. Suddenly, Timmy felt better, like the air was clearing. He saw Super Shepherd, wow, what a horrible name, put 2 huge slashes down the demon's side. The wounds didn't heal and continued to leak Black Eye Core. Without its insane Regan, this fight would go a lot better. David got in one last slash. The charnel demon had suddenly lashed out with both arms and a whipping tentacle at him. A member of your party has died. David was killed with multiple attacks. Raleigh yelled, "It's going down. Keep at it." Charnel demon health 1490/2000. Unfortunately, so were the players. Joseph got to Lewis. He cut the revive to Suzette, hating to lose the mana. He was downing potions fast as he could from his satchel, preoccupied with drinking a mana potion so he could revive Lewis and head back to David. Joseph forgot about how Hugh had died. He felt the tentacles wrap around him and begin to squeeze as they ambushed him. Ozzy saw the fight was going badly. The tentacles near Hugh were dead. He waded back into the fight, plenty of room with David down and out. Great swords didn't really play well with others in a tight fight. If it wasn't regenerating, maybe they could cut it into pieces? Raleigh, aim for that arm. I'll help. Raleigh got in 2 good hits on the spear arm before taking a shot from the pummeling arm that knocked him to his knees. Timmy was glowing like the sun now. He had downed his emergency potion of hefty mana and was using both of his auras. One provided a bit of healing, but more importantly, they were both light-based, which was burning the creature. Damage done by light and fire didn't seem to be regenerating at all now. Charnel demon health 1100/2000. Ozzy hacked at the wound in the spear arm where Raleigh had cut it. The entire arm fell off as he hacked all the way through the bone. Just like butchering a sedge beast. Unfortunately, the arm was pissed. It couldn't aim anymore, but the coiled muscles could get off one last shot. It waited until someone moved into its arc of fire, and as Timmy stepped forward, shot into him at point-blank range. The shot came in at his belt line, just under his chest piece and bypassing his shield. You have taken a critical hit. You suffer 276 points of piecing damage that has bypassed your armor. Luckily, your liver was missed. Luckily, your lungs were not hit. Sadly, your heart is in no shape to pump blood. In this case, 2 out of 3 really is bad. You have died. As the last remaining party member, Hugh received a message. A member of your party has died. Sir Timothy was killed with a critical attack from a bone spike. His heart just wasn't in it after that. All players in the vicinity saw the following. The dying light. An ally of a light has perished. The dark grows stronger. Creatures allied to the dark will now do 40% more damage in your battle. Success. All followers of the light in the immediate area are destroyed. Your demonic pact has been fulfilled. The village of Sedgwick is now your domain to rule as the dark rolls to eventual victory. For fulfilling a major quest, you receive 10 additional core skill points to enhance your power. Create a charnel pit for further favors from the dark. He was not a happy camper. Fething hell. Do you idiots know how much I just lost in bonuses? You can all burn. Twin fireballs were launched, one from each of his hands. Hugh really preferred fireball, and rarely was he allowed to use it. Even against huge hordes, he wasn't supposed to do better than the star of their little show. Screw that now. He was burning the hell out of the demons and these ACME assholes and then getting the hell out of here. Even if he could kill the demon, he knew not to. The death blow had to come from Sir Timothy. Rules are rules, and bonuses depended on following the rules. So, a couple of therapeutic fireballs, and he was out of here. He'd be out of mana, but he didn't need mana to run. He scampered off between two of the huts, making for the open field beyond. You have suffered damage from a temporary ally. You took 80 points from a fireball. You took 80 points from a fireball. You are on fire. You are on fire. Both Raleigh and Ozzy were knocked flat by the twin blasts. They stayed flat and tried to put out the fires by rolling. The demon screamed as it burned and was caught on fire. Hugh moved to the top of its list of who to murder next. The charnel demon left them and went to hunt the one that was burning him. Hugh didn't like this and started running. He didn't get far. Ben's fist hit him in the stomach, bending him over. That is for burning my buddy, Raleigh. A left fist hit him in his face, bloodying his nose and knocking him down. And that's for burning my buddy, Ozzy. And this next one is for being a Momco asshole. The kick took Hugh in the stomach, leaving him unable to breathe for a moment. Ben retreated as the charnel demon came to finish him off. Your party has been wiped out. Your party has failed the quest. Something is rotten in Sedgwick. Your foe has increased in power. Neither Ozzy nor Raleigh was in good shape at this point. Raleigh started with 400 health, but was down to just 60. Ozzy had a whopping 780 health. His high con and STR added to the high health that all contract workers had and let him take a lot of damage. After the burning, though, he was hovering at about 300. Raleigh reached out and transferred all of his stamina to Ozzy, healing him to nearly full. Damn it, Raleigh. Save some for yourself. Nah, I think it's better to have one big dog rather than two little yappy ones. I'm out of mana and stamina and mostly dead. Might go take a nap. Raleigh quit glowing and his shepherd powers faded out. Besides, you've got a plan. I can tell. Ozzy was skeptical. It wasn't a great plan. You're near dead. Suzette is really dead. Ben only has a whip. And the demon hits a hell of a lot harder than I do. Maybe we can lure it into an oven and cook it to death for dinner. There was a blinding flash of light as Suzette reappeared in a glowing circle of runes. She was wearing different clothes than before, a short white dress, trimmed in gold. There was a glowing golden triangle on her forehead. Her smile was blinding. She turned to her astounded friends. See, I knew Ozzy would have a plan. How about I get the thing's attention while you get the oven ready? Failure. One of your kills has returned. Your demonic pact has been invalidated. The village of Sedgwick is taken from you. You can kiss that extra power goodbye. Dirty cheater, your damage is reduced to normal levels. Complete your quest and make sure they stay dead this time, if you want to regain what you have lost. The charnel demon screamed. This was an unfair turn of events. Not that betrayal was unknown to creatures of the dark. It was actually common. But it was always unfair when it happened to you. It had been intending to seek the source of the delicious flow of dark mana and heal itself. Its natural regen and what little dark mana it could sop up from the remaining puddles just wasn't enough. But now it needed to find where the pox-ridden follower of the light was hiding. Suzette helped out with this. You have been struck by solar arrow for 80 points of damage. Health is reduced to 690/2000. There, it had found the meat that hurt it. Time to hunt. It fired its bone spear at her, then remember where that arm was. Drat, it would have to chase her down. The meat was moving back to where it had first spawned. A good spot, still rich with the dark. It moved to the pit it had spawned in, but it wasn't there. The dirt had been pushed in covering its pit. The little bit of dark magic here was barely enough to start regrowing its arm. You have been struck by solar arrow for 80 points of damage. Health is reduced to 670/2000. There, in that large wooden cave, it saw the follower of light trying to cast another spell. The demon rushed into the barn. Wow, there was a lot of meat here. He could use this to heal. It was slower than dark magic, but just as good. Searching for the annoying human, the demon saw her scamper through a small hole in the back. It went to smash through the wall, but the stubborn would resisted it. Stacks of the hated woods were piled at the back of the barn, and it couldn't move through. Just you and me now, asshole. A large human was standing there. The butcher. It knew about butchers. Fearsome things. Why the hell was this one on the side of the light? And why was it holding that stupid stick? Stick really didn't do the timber justice. It was the largest piece of sassafras they could find in the short time they had. 18 foot long and a foot wide and thick. It weighed just under 600 pounds. One end had been crudely pointed with an axe. Ozzy hefted it like a twig. He ran at the demon, skewering it and pinning it to the back wall. Ben yelled at the few workers they'd been able to find. "Piling on fast. I'm lighting it up." Jorges, Amon, and a half-dozen others ran forward and hefted more wood on top of the pinned demon. Raleigh and Ben threw torches into the pools of oil they poured on the floor. They'd used every bit of cooking or lamp oil they could find, and all the hard alcohol from the tavern. The demon screamed, and the fire roared. Suzette hit it again and again with her cantrip until she was out of mana. Ben handed some bottles to Raleigh. "How's your pitching arm?" "I have a whole satchel of very expensive healing potions donated by a dead cleric." They began to throw healing potions at Ozzy's back, breaking the bottles and splashing him with the contents. His health was still dropping, but not nearly as rapidly as it would have. The demon tried to use the hanging meat to heal, but too quickly it turned to cooked meat and was useless. Try as it might, it couldn't budge the stick the human was pinning it with. How was a human so damn strong? It inspected Ozzy. "Ozzy, butcher, contract worker, level 2, current health, 120/780. Stats, resistances, none. STR, 15. Dex, 2. Con, 4. Attacks, abilities, hack meat, hack bone, push onward. You may burn 1 health and gain 5 stamina. You may increase STR by 1 for 1 minute at the cost of 50 stamina. Cobber. Ozzy had a monstrous amount of stamina, 300 from being level 2, another 190 from his STR plus con, and all of it tripled because of the benefit for being a contract worker. He had enough stamina to work around the clock, and extra to increase his STR temporarily. Ozzy had burned 900 of his nearly 1,600 stamina to increase his STR to 15 and pin the demon in place for as long as he could. It wasn't normally a good idea. His bones and ligaments couldn't take the strain, as he didn't have the con to sustain that STR. Of course, fighting demons inside a raging inferno wasn't smart either, especially when the fire finally reached that small barrel of dwarven whiskey that Derek had hidden under the bar. The barrel exploded, and a small sun ignited inside the barn. Being right on top of it, the demon died immediately. Ozzy lasted a half-second longer. They'd talked about ways he could retreat, but there was nothing that could hold the demon in place except him. It wasn't his first death, but burning as you broke your own bones was certainly a painful one. The roof of the barn levitated upward briefly, then crashed down, followed by the rest of the walls. Jorges and anyone who could lift the timber ran forward and fed the fire. They were taking no chances with a Tier 2 elite. Ozzy resurrected at dawn with the crushing weight of the death penalty on his soul. But at least he got to sit and drink a tall, foamy blood dark by the light of his own funeral pyre. Billy appeared around 7 a.m. with Vern. Eyeing the destruction of one side of the town, they made their way to what used to be the barn, smokehouse, and corrals. They were greeted by a smiling and drunk Suzette. "Blooddark, drink up, you're many beers behind." Billy noticed that the few of his contract workers he could see were drunk and partying, along with most of the town. Vern took a sip of his beer. "Damn fine beer. When did Blood learn how to make a good dark beer?" Billy was upset. "Why do I always miss the good parties?" Ozzy was sitting nearby on a large tree stump, a bottle of whiskey in one hand and a beer next to him. "You work too hard, Billy. You should stick around more. Go demon hunting with us." Billy took a seat on the stump. "Demons? Right. Sounds fun." Ozzy gave him a significant look, and Momko was in the center of it somehow. One of their high-level parties got in the middle of it and got dead. That got Billy's attention. Momko? Oh, this was getting better and better. "Well, let's hear the story then. Have a seat, Vern. Time for some high-level brainstorming." Vern considered. "I'm liking this beer. Any more of it?" Ozzy yelled out. "Another keg of blood dark, please, Suzette."